Chapter 1356. The interior of the Star Tower was similar to a Buddhist pagoda. Jiang Wang stood in the middle of the tower, not knowing which level he was on. Looking around, the ceiling, floor, and walls all had the color of gold dust. On the wall, there was a dazzling golden Buddhist shrine hanging at regular intervals. In the shrine, there were all kinds of golden Buddha statues, vivid and lifelike. The way this star tower appeared was not exactly the same as when the Seven Stars Tower appeared when the Seven Stars Mystery Realm opened, but it followed a similar principle. Or it could be said that Master Guan Yin used some method to imitate the opening of the Seven Stars Mystery Realm, thus completing his guidance. Jiang Wang could not see the situation outside, but he could feel that the entire star tower was moving. As there was no target for comparison, there was no way to judge the speed. But it was definitely faster than Tian Shili's Dao technique, and also faster than the streak of starlight that Tian Anping used from the Fu Bai Tower. Thinking of Tian Anping, Jiang Wang could not help but think, Ji Qing was his fortress, and Fu Bai Tower was his crossbow? The last time Jiang Wang delivered the decree, he had a very strange feeling. Tian Anping's inner mansion seemed to be outside, and cultivated together with Ji Qing. And on this night when he sneaked into the Seven Stars Valley, he showed his hand again, attacking from afar through Fu Bai Tower, and his power did not seem to be inferior to Tian Shili's. Were these all Tian Anping's methods to bypass the cultivation restriction? Under the restriction of the inner mansion realm, he used Fu Bai Tower and Ji Qing to indirectly use the power of the divine descent state? He seemed to have put the cultivation system outside his body, and used it to escape the restriction imposed on his physical body. In a sense, Fu Bai Tower and Ji Qing could be counted as his body. He was really a terrifying figure that defied common sense. If he had not been sealed for the past 10 years, how terrifying would Tian Anping be today? Tian Chang kept a low profile, and Tian He kept a low profile. Although they had their own motives, it was also because Tian Anping was too terrifying. They did not dare to take the risk of Tian Anping's attention too quickly. Otherwise, with their abilities, they would have been able to rise to prominence long ago. Jiang Wang did not let his imagination run wild for too long. The star tower flew for a while and suddenly stopped. Like a pagoda made of sand crumbling in the wind, everything that made up the star tower turned into specks of star sand that flowed in the air, and all of it fell into a single palm. The owner of the palm was wearing a white moon monk robe. His shiny scalp glowed with a jade-white light, and his face was very handsome. It was Guan Yin. This place was still filled with towering trees, and the forest was so deep that it covered the sun. That was why the starlight was so conspicuous. However, the surrounding environment was indeed difficult to take away any of his attention from Guan Yin. Senior. Jiang Wang was surprised. Of course, there was also joy on his face. The last time he left, Master Guan Yan's true spirit was only able to wander in the cracks of the world, and only with the help of Su Qian's spirit jade could he temporarily appear. But now, he had already revealed his physical form. It was obvious that he had made a huge breakthrough. Guan Yan's face was slightly tired, but his smile was still warm. He casually put away the ball of star sand and said, "Come with me, little friend." Seeing Jiang Wang looking at the star sand in his hand, he explained, "This is the star tower that I built when I established the outer tower. Because I spent a lot of effort on it, it didn't disintegrate after I died, but I lost contact with it later on. When I became like this, I didn't need it anymore. This time, in order to guide you, I specially found it. I used it to connect to the Seven Star Tower's mystic realm." This once again broke Jiang Wang's understanding. It turned out that the Star Tower could be so powerful that it could still exist independently after a person died. It turned out that the Star Tower could be used as an artifact other than cultivating one's body, preaching Tao and projecting starlight. He instantly felt that the outer tower cultivators he knew and the star towers he had seen before were all unreal. Master Guanyin seemed to have completely guessed Jiang Wang's thoughts. He explained, "Of course, the star tower I built back then was a little different from ordinary ones. As I said, I spent a lot of effort on it." "This was called a little different? What kind of effort did you have to spend a lot of effort on it?" Jiang Wang was speechless. However, thinking of Master Guanyan's mind-reading ability, he didn't dare to criticize too much. Guanyin continued, "Don't worry, I didn't use mind-reading ability on you. It's my ability, but it's not my right. Under normal circumstances, I won't use it. The last time you came to the Forest Ocean Origin World, I didn't have enough control over my true spirit state and couldn't control the divine ability I found. Now, however, I can control it. The reason why I seem to be able to see what you're thinking is just a general feeling and not the power of the divine ability." Jiang Wang could completely understand Master Guanyan's words. When he wasn't using the astray divine ability, he could sometimes use his grasp of the battle situation to create the effect of astray. This was a habit that gradually formed after mastering the divine ability, or rather, an instinct. Guanyin possessed the mind-reading ability and had seen the hearts of countless people. Naturally, he could see through some people most of the time without using the divine ability. What really moved Jiang Wang was Master Guanyan's words, "It's my ability, but it's not my right." After mastering great power, it was very easy for transcendental cultivators to develop the illusion of being a god and view all living beings as nothing more than weeds. However, in Jiang Wang's eyes, this was just a sign that one's mind wasn't strong enough to control the power. If one really had the power to peek into other people's minds, how many people would be able to restrain themselves from doing so? Even Jiang Wang himself wasn't sure if he could do it. He sighed with emotion. For many people, the power of their ability is where their right lies. Guanyin gave him a deep look. "At least for you, young friend, that's not the case. We've arrived." It wasn't until he finished speaking that Jiang Wang realized that he had unknowingly followed Guanyin to a fallen piece of rotten wood. This was an abnormally large piece of rotten divine dragon wood, and it looked like a wall on the ground. Jiang Wang naturally recognized it. This was the landmark that led to the Forest of Hanging Skulls, which was also Yan Zhao's lair. However, he had just arrived in the Forest Ocean Origin World and had clearly only taken 2 steps with Guanyin, so how had he already arrived at the Forest of Hanging Skulls? When they had first set out from the divine Shadowland and arrived at the Forest of Hanging Skulls, it had taken them quite some time. This is the power of the laws. Master Guanyan's explanation had always been timely, and he rarely waited for Jiang Wang to ask. So it was because of Master Guanyan's influence that they had arrived at this place in just 2 steps. Jiang Wang had a rough idea of what had happened. He had experienced something similar once before. Back when Taoist Chong Guang had sent him to the bewildering world to atone for his sins, the colors had been lost, the images had been peeled off, and the scenery had been replaced. He had also arrived there in an instant. However, Taoist Chong Guang's experience was definitely not as natural as Master Guanyan's experience. It was so natural that Jiang Wang felt as if he had only taken 2 steps with Master Guanyin, and it was so natural that it was as if he had no emotions at all. However, this wasn't the main point of this trip. Jiang Wang glanced at his surroundings and couldn't help but ask, "Senior, did you ask me to come to the Forest Ocean Origin World this time, because a new Yan Xiao has been born?" In the Forest Ocean Origin World, besides Master Guanyin, there was something else that had left a deep impression on Jiang Wang, and that was Yan Xiao, an undying bird, a vicious bird that ate skulls. When Yan Xiao cries, it will eat 100 heads. Their group had clearly killed Yan Xiao and completed the so-called mission of the Dragon God, but right before they left the Forest Ocean Origin World, they had heard Yan Zhao's voice again. That was why Jiang Wang had thought of Yan Shao when Master Guan Yin had mentioned that he had something to discuss with him at the Star-Moon Origin World. Now that they had returned to the Forest-Ocean Origin World, Master Guan Yin had immediately led them to the Hanging Skull Forest, which had further verified their suspicions. That was why his question had been very direct. Guan Yin stared at the giant piece of rotten wood in front of him and sighed softly. Yan Shao has never died. How could that be? Jiang Wang couldn't believe his ears. During their last trip to the Forest-Ocean Origin World, he, Wu Qiji, Su Qiun, and Qing Qishu had worked together to kill Yan Shao. In fact, Qing Qishu, who was always trying to get close to Yan Shao, had been sacrificed in that battle. After the battle, they had dismembered Yan Shao and brought Yan Zhao's beak back to the modern realm. He had asked Lian Ke to refine it into the slaughter spike, which he then refined into the Buzhou wind. All of this was real. How could Yan Shao have never died? Then what had they killed? Guan Yin said, "What you killed last time was a projection, a shell, a divine rank expert." Projection? Shell? Divine rank? The more Jiang Wang listened, the more confused he became. Guan Yin raised a finger and tapped his forehead. His heart connection also allowed him to know my heart and understand my intentions. Guan Yin's memories slowly flowed into Jiang Wang's mind. 800 years ago in the Forest-Ocean Origin World, Yan Shao had been born from evil. He had knocked on the door, begged for food, and devoured human skulls. After the Forest-Ocean Sacred Clan's many attempts at resistance had failed, they had decisively chosen to hunt for skulls. They had given up on direct confrontation with Yan Shao and instead chose to slaughter the other clans in the Forest-Ocean Origin World. They had sacrificed their own clansmen and sacrificed them to Yan Shao. With the Dragon God's protection, the Forest-Ocean Sacred Clan was the strongest clan in the Forest-Ocean Origin World. Not a single clan could stop the Forest-Ocean Sacred Clan from hunting. Ever since then, the Forest-Ocean Origin World had been plunged into a long period of darkness. This was a cruel history of slaughter, a bloody story filled with filthy blood. The chaos lasted for 300 years. When Guan Yin descended, the Forest-Ocean Origin World was already in a state of complete chaos. Hatred, slaughter, blood, all the evil in human nature had surged into the Forest-Ocean Origin World. If Yan Shao was the Forest-Ocean Origin World's greatest demon, then the Forest-Ocean Sacred Clan was the most savage executioner. The Dragon God emissaries, who had descended at the same time as Guan Yin, were all hunted down and killed by the Forest-Ocean Sacred Clan. Their heads were eaten by Yan Shao. Only Guan Yin was an exception. Another 500 years later, Jiang Wang and the others had descended. The other Dragon God emissaries, who had descended at the same time, had all died from various accidents. Only Jiang Wang, Su Qiun, and Wu Qiji had survived. They had helped the Forest-Ocean Sacred Clan hide in the Land of Divine Shade, killed Yan Shao, and completed the Dragon God's mission, but this wasn't the entire truth. How was Yan Shao born? Just like Jiang Wang, Guan Yin was also searching for the answer to this question. According to the ancient records that Su Qiun had read, after Yan Zhao's death, his evil thoughts continued to linger. Only 1 out of 100,000 Yan Zhao's heads would be born from his head, and its name was Yan Shao. This was probably the oldest record of Yan Shao in Heaven Pilfering Manor, and it was recorded in the form of a legend. Of course, it was very believable. However, the Yan Shao that had caused the Forest-Ocean Origin World's chaos had not been born in such a manner. Guan Yin, who possessed the mind-reading ability, was able to see through the secrets of the human heart once he put all his effort into searching for the answer. After questioning everyone who had a direct connection to Yan Shao, especially the elders of the previous generation of Forest-Ocean Sacred Clan who had served as Grandma Little Annoying, Guan Yin found the answer. The Forest-Ocean Origin World's Yan Shao had not been born with evil thoughts naturally. Instead, it had been deliberately nurtured by a certain existence. and that existence was the forest ocean origin world's dragon god. It was the dragon god who had created Yen Shao and instilled fear in the forest ocean sacred clan. It was the dragon god who had led the forest ocean sacred clan into slaughtering the other clans. Even the night invasion that had swept through the forest ocean origin world and killed countless living beings had been accomplished by the elders of the forest ocean sacred clan using a forbidden art and borrowing the power of the dragon god. That was essentially the result of the dragon god's manipulation. Then what was the dragon god? Why did the dragon god do this? Why had he become the source of all the suffering in the forest ocean origin world despite being a god? Guan Yin began to trace the history of the forest ocean sacred clan. With great courage and intelligence, he risked his life to search for the truth lost in time. He discovered that the forest ocean sacred clan had not been a sacred clan from the beginning. Even the divine Shadowlands, which were of great significance to the forest ocean sacred clan, had been snatched from other clans. It was only after they worshipped the dragon god that they received his protection and were bestowed with the power of the dragon god. Under the guidance of a divine decree, the forest ocean sacred clan rose to power step by step and became the strongest clan in the forest ocean origin world, becoming the so-called sacred clan. And finally, they became the master of the forest ocean origin world. During this process, the dragon god grew stronger and slowly became the only true god of the forest ocean origin world. Guan Yan's memories came to an end at this point. These were the truths he had discovered in the history of the forest ocean origin world. One had to realize that when he had first arrived in the forest ocean origin world, his cultivation base had only been at the inner palace realm. He had fought against the entire forest ocean origin world and the dragon god who had caused all the tragedies. He had discovered the history of the forest ocean origin world by himself. Jiang Wang's mind was shaken, and he could not help but ask, so Yen Shao, the invasion of the night, the period of darkness, were all part of the dragon god's plan to strengthen himself? Just like how he helped the forest ocean sacred clan rise to power? The relationship between the dragon god and Yen Shao explained many of the doubts he had left behind in the forest ocean origin world, but it also gave rise to many new questions. I believe that they are of the same origin, Guan Yin said. Does that dragon god want to destroy the entire forest ocean origin world? Or does he want to devour it? Jiang Wang was even more confused. As a god, I cannot understand how he can benefit from killing his own believers. Even though Jiang Wang did not dare to claim that he understood the cultivation of the divine path, he had some general knowledge about it. After all, the modern realm's country of peace and country of Mu were both divine path countries, and he had been to them before. He had also encountered the White Bone Path, who wanted to establish a divine nation in the modern realm. He knew that the divine path placed great importance on believers, and this dragon god had gone to great lengths to strengthen the forest ocean sacred clan, but instead of thinking about how to unify the faith of the entire forest ocean origin world, he had gone to great lengths to create a legendary bird of utmost evil to exterminate the living beings of this world. It was truly incomprehensible. At first, I did not understand either. Later on, I realized that the dragon god's goal was not the godhood. Guan Yin raised his head and looked at the sky. It was this. Jiang Wang followed his gaze and saw the lonely Alioth star hanging high in the sky. Chapter 1357. The dragon god's target is the Alioth star? Jiang Wang asked in shock. Guan Yin said, after I've exhausted all possibilities, this is the only true answer. Jiang Wang still found it hard to understand. How could a star be his target? It was a star that hung high in the night sky and illuminated the myriad realms. What do you think a star is? Guan Yin asked. What was a star? Many people had many answers. To most cultivators, A star represented the distant heavens and was the beacon of starlight sacred tower. In terms of astrology, stars were the foundation of divination and were connected to the river of fate. If Jiang Anan had to answer, she might say that it was her father and mother watching from afar, looking up at the night sky filled with twinkling stars. People would always be curious about this. How high did they have to jump? How long did they have to fly before they could touch the stars? What kind of secrets were hidden in the seemingly endless stars? However, extraordinary cultivators at a certain level of cultivation should know that the distance between a star and the modern realm wasn't directly related to space. Every star illuminated the myriad realms. For example, the forest ocean origin world was within the range of Alioth star's illumination and was illuminated solely by it. However, Alioth star didn't just illuminate the forest ocean origin world. It also projected light into the real world. For example, the void continent was within the range of Dubhe star's illumination and was illuminated solely by it. However, Qing Huiqiming had once told a legend about the void continent. It was said that there used to be many stars in the blue sky. They fell from the blue sky and pierced through the earth in the process, forming an underground cavern. Due to the falling stars, only Dubhe star remained in the blue sky. From this legend, it could be seen that the void continent had been illuminated by many stars in the beginning. Due to some unforeseen event, only Dubhe star remained. However, such a legend had never been heard of in the forest ocean origin world. It was as if Alioth star was the only star in the sky and had been there since time immemorial. Of course, perhaps Jiang Wang hadn't been in the forest ocean origin world for long enough to hear more legends. In the sense that only Alioth star existed, the forest ocean origin world was naturally special. However, it wasn't special enough. Even the hidden Yuan world that Jiang Wang had visited only had one planet hanging in the sky. It could be said that the entire Seven Stars Pavilion's mystic realm seemed to have sent the participants into the only world illuminated by the Seven Stars Pavilion in terms of the richness of the worlds. The void continent was obviously greater than the forest ocean origin world, and the forest ocean origin world was far superior to the hidden Yuan world. To a certain extent, the stars are connected to the river of destiny. They are also the beacon that determines the location of the Starlight Sacred House, Jiang Wang said. He was not stingy in showing Guan Yin some of the knowledge he knew. Of course, he was also aware that his knowledge was shallow. How rare! You also have an understanding of astrology. This will make it easier for you to understand the stars. Guan Yin said, stars exist, but they don't exist in a specific place. They are enchanting and ethereal. It is very difficult for us to touch it in a realistic sense. Usually, what we can touch is only starlight. How do you understand Xing Lu? Jiang Wang thought about it seriously and answered, the foundation of Tao. With his current strength, he was naturally not satisfied with merely erecting an ordinary star tower. If he wanted to establish the Starlight Sacred House, which was the #1 inner palace in all of history, he had to complete the Tao Outer Tower. Tempering the body with starlight, guiding starlight into battle, anchoring the position, these were not what Jiang Wang valued the most. What he valued was the brilliance that the Starlight Sacred House emitted in the vast universe and described Jiang Wang's Tao. That was why he understood Xing Lu in this way. Guan Yin was naturally able to obtain enough information from this answer. He smiled in satisfaction and asked, "What would happen if your Tao inner tower was changed to the stars of the universe?" A single stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. When a cultivator resonated with the power of a star tower, it was indeed like resonating with the stars in the sky. But who would really treat a star tower as a star? Who would think so? Who would dare to think so? A cultivator's starlight sacred house and the stars of the universe that truly illuminated the myriad realms were two completely different things that could not be compared. The former would usually dissipate along with the cultivator's death. To date, the only tenacious star tower that Jiang Wang had seen was the one that Guan Yin had found. After Guan Yan's death, it still stubbornly drifted in the starry sky, and the stars of the universe were eternal and indestructible existences. Through the long river of time, many heroes had passed away, but the stars of today were still the stars of the past. Jiang Wang almost instantly understood why the dragon god had set the Alioth star as his goal. The Alioth star was a real star that illuminated the myriad realms. If he could use it to describe his Tao, his orthodoxy would naturally spread throughout the myriad realms. Even if the dragon god unified the forest-ocean origin world, he would only be the faith of a single realm. If he could control the Alioth star, then he would have the chance to become the dragon god of the myriad realms. But could it really be done? With Jiang Wang's current cultivation and knowledge, he could not understand or imagine how it could be done. Even if he knew the ultimate goal and understood many things, he still could not deduce the principle. But there was no doubt that the dragon god had already begun his plan 800 years ago and had unwaveringly pushed forward. And great Master Guan Yin from 500 years ago had analyzed the dragon god's various arrangements and deduced the dragon god's goal. His #1 inner palace expert in history might not include Guan Yin, who had descended upon the forest-ocean origin world over 500 years ago. From this, it could be inferred that there had been countless Tianjiao hidden throughout the ages, but due to various circumstances, they had not been able to shine. The Elder of Heaven's Sanctum's battle record might not be unbeatable. Perhaps it was just that no one knew of him and no one passed on his name. Of course, in terms of pure combat strength, Jiang Wang, who had already reached the peak of inner palace combat strength, was confident that he could defeat any inner palace cultivator he faced. This was confidence that had been forged through victory after victory. He was not invincible in the same realm from the very beginning, but he had firmly walked all the way to where he was now, so he no longer doubted himself. He believed that in the long river of history there had to be many Tianjiao who had the strength to defeat him. But he also believed that in a life-and-death battle, he would definitely be the victor. But he still could not understand the dragon god's plan. I don't know if Cheng Gongxing can understand, but what about Zhao Xiaowu? Jiang Wang could not help but wonder. So he asked, "How can I do it?" Guan Yin said, "First of all, you have to know one thing: the stars have their own will. This kind of will might not be the thoughts of a living being, but rather a great existence that is difficult to specifically describe. It is similar to the will of the world. Do you know what the will of the world is?" Of course Jiang Wang knew. Hadn't the white bone evil god been rejected by the will of the world, causing Zhuang Chengxian to find an opportunity to take advantage of it? "I know a little," Jiang Wang said. "At your age, you don't like to read. It's not easy for you to know so much," Guan Yin praised. "Senior, please do not speak carelessly." Jiang Wang was somewhat unhappy. "I really like to read. I've been reading a lot recently." Guan Yin glanced at him. "When I told you to go to the study to get my monk robes, you really only took the robes and left. You didn't even open a single book. In fact, there are some of my cultivation experiences there. Originally, I wanted to give them to you as a reward. At the time, I was in a hurry. I was in too much of a hurry. My heart was set on returning home like an arrow. It's not that I don't like to read." Jiang Wang felt greatly embarrassed and hurriedly changed the subject. "Senior, if the dragon god wants to achieve his goal, what does he need to do? Please continue." Chapter 1358. The star has its own will, so it's impossible for it to be tainted. However, for some reason, the Alioth star's will has already dissipated. I believe that the dragon god saw through this loophole. Guan Yin said, "The forest-ocean origin world is Aliotha's only world, and it has an extremely close and unique connection with the Alioth star. The dragon god wants to take control of the forest ocean origin world and use it as a stepping stone to take control of Alioth. However, the forest ocean origin world's will definitely not approve of this. There will definitely be conflict between the two sides, and the dragon god's method is extremely cruel. Any life form in the forest ocean origin world will affect this world to some extent. The dragon god wants to use the fear, chaos, and slaughter that engulfs the entire forest ocean origin world to see through the truth of this world and capture its will. Jiang Wang could understand this point. Senior brother Yu Beidu's blood divination was based on a similar principle. By slaughtering the main characters of this world, the human race, he was able to observe the ripples in the river of fate. However, the dragon god's methods were even greater, and his demands were even greater. Guan Yen continued. He led the Forest Ocean Sacred Clan to become the main characters of the Forest Ocean origin world. He then used the evil intent of this world to nurture Yen Xiao, which caused hatred, slaughter, and panic. Yen Xiao continued to eat skulls and replaced the position of the main character of the Forest Ocean origin world. Although Yen Xiao is extremely evil, it was born of this world, so it is not resisted by the world's will. The dragon god controls the Forest Ocean Sacred Clan and Yen Xiao, so he can control the entire Forest Ocean origin world as he pleases. However, there is another problem. Alioth is a star that illuminates the universe, and the mark of the Forest Ocean origin world alone is not enough to completely lock onto it. The dragon god also needs an important anchor point, which is the living beings of this world. In the vast universe there are two paths. One is the mark of the Forest Ocean origin world that is most closely connected to the Alioth star, and the other is the most stable mark of the living beings of this world. When these two paths meet, he can capture Alioth. However, the living world is not the Forest Ocean origin world. The humans of this world will not be easy prey. Once some powerhouses discover his actions, even if he has the power of a true god and is hiding in the Forest Ocean origin, he will not be spared. Jiang Wang was shocked when he heard this. Emissary of the dragon god? Your acuity is indeed surprising. There was a hint of approval in Guan Yan's eyes as he nodded and said, the so-called dragon god's emissary is nothing but the dragon god's scheme to devour the present world's humans. I don't know what method the dragon god used to connect with the secret realm of the Seven Stars Tower in the present world and quietly replaced the original part of the secret realm, creating the so-called miracle of the dragon god's throne. With the mission of the dragon god's emissary, he gave a few people benefits in order to trick them into an endless supply of food. Understood. Jiang Wang understood too much. The biggest question that had troubled them was why Su Qian's friend, who had died in the night invasion, had disappeared along with his storage box? In the past experience of the Forest Ocean Saint clan, the invasion of the night would only take away people and not things. At that time, they wondered if there were other life forms that could move freely in the darkness. In fact, he even suspected that it was someone else who had arrived in the Forest Ocean origin realm with him. Now it seemed that the one who took away the storage box was clearly Yen Xiao, who was controlled by the dragon god. Because Little Yu's storage box came from the present world. Because the dragon god needed to rummage through Little Yu's belongings to understand the outside world and the present world more, thus helping him control the Alioth star. The Alioth star had shifted and landed on the throne formed by the altar's light. The so-called miracle of the dragon god's throne had once puzzled Jiang Wang. Now it seemed that it was clearly describing the dragon god's ambition. He wanted to control the Alioth star and use his own will to replace the will of the Alioth star, thus occupying the throne of the myriad worlds. Not to mention how difficult and dangerous the process of discovering the truth of history was. There was only one opponent. Jiang Wang asked himself in his heart what he would have done if he had discovered the dragon god's ambition. Would he pretend not to know, cooperate with the mission, and leave the forest ocean origin world? Presumably, after returning to the present world, he would think of a way to report this matter to the experts of the present world. But the universe was so vast. Without a precise beacon, how could he find the forest ocean origin world? In fact, leaving the forest ocean origin world was equivalent to giving up on the living beings of this world. This was understandable. It had nothing to do with the forest ocean origin world in the first place, so there was no need for him to take responsibility for this world. Moreover, this was a matter that far exceeded the capabilities of an inner palace cultivator, so it was understandable that he was unable to handle it. No one had the right to force others to sacrifice themselves. To be honest, Jiang Wang didn't know what he would do if he was in such a situation. Everything he thought of now didn't represent the final outcome. But Guan Yan's choice was very clear: face it. He faced the dragon god. He faced a terrifying existence that targeted the stars of the universe, the entire forest ocean origin world, and even the forest ocean origin world. What kind of courage was this? So senior. Jiang Wang asked, how do we deal with such a dragon god? Resisting the dragon god isn't something that can be accomplished overnight. How do we defeat him? I've been thinking about this problem since over 500 years ago, and I've been working on it ever since. Guan Yen looked at the decaying divine dragon wood in front of him with an unavoidable vicissitude of life. The dragon god's plan is very complete, and the plan is proceeding very smoothly. He used the legendary evil bird Yen Shao to complete almost all of his actions. He took control of the forest ocean origin world step by step and locked onto the forest ocean origin world's consciousness. Thus, he began to take the next step. He forced his way into the world's origin and began to devour the forest ocean origin world's consciousness before reaching out to the Alioth star. This was my only chance, and it was also the chance I'd been waiting for a long time. While the dragon god was devouring the world's consciousness, he was also being restrained and assimilated by the world's consciousness. This was destined to be a long battle, and no one would be able to escape before the final victor was decided. He was an exceptionally cautious fellow. Even at this point in time, he still had 3 backup plans. The first was to use the invasion of night to erase the flow of time in this world. The second was to use Yen Shao as a substitute. The third was to control the forest ocean sacred tribe that had always believed in him. Night was the forest ocean origin world's nightmare. The living beings of this world could only hide in the so-called land of divine shade for half of their lives. Not only did this strengthen their belief in him, but it also cut off more possibilities for development. Meanwhile, Yen Shao and the forest ocean sacred tribe were enemies. They stood on 2 sides and slaughtered the forest ocean at the same time. No living being was able to break free. The first thing I did was to kill the forest ocean sacred tribe's elders and cut off the direct connection between the dragon god and the forest ocean sacred tribe. Then, I changed history and nurtured traditions to cut off the source of Yen Zhao's power. I also used this to weaken the dragon god and delay his assimilation of the world's consciousness. At this point, Guan Yan's various arrangements from 500 years ago had a reasonable explanation. Jiang Wang couldn't help but praise, Senior, you're truly generous. You used 500 years of education to resist the chaos and restrain the dragon god. You're using good to slay evil. Your merit is immeasurable. It's no wonder you were able to form a golden body. However, Guan Yen only laughed bitterly and shook his head. The dragon god cultivated the legendary evil bird Yen Shao and used it as one of his shells. He would also often project his body and act as a substitute for the forest ocean origin world. In order to hide himself and not be disturbed by other powerhouses, he used Yen Shao for everything. This included eating skulls and hunting down envoys of the dragon god. He cultivated Yen Shao, controlled Yen Shao, and relied on Yen Shao more and more. In a sense, Yen Xiao was also his divine rank. It was a step from a human to a god. However, Yen Xiao was still an evil bird. In the process of devouring human skulls, it also gave birth to its own consciousness and intelligence. It was unwilling to be controlled by the dragon god. Taking advantage of the weakening of its resentment and the loss of its power, it had no choice but to find a new path. It chose to devour chaos to strengthen itself. This resulted in a period of weakness once a year due to the backlash of chaos. However, this was also part of the dragon god's plan. In order to avoid the world's consciousness, the dragon god couldn't personally take action. Thus, he guided the Forest Ocean sacred tribe to create the night invasion. He used the native living beings of the Forest Ocean origin world to kill the most living beings of this world in the shortest time possible. However, the essence of the night invasion was the leakage of the world origin and the invasion of chaos. This caused the Forest Ocean origin world to be riddled with holes. This situation, in turn, affected the dragon god's actions after taking control of the Forest Ocean origin world. He wanted to borrow the secret connection between the Forest Ocean origin world and Alioth Star to invade Alioth Star. He needed a complete Forest Ocean origin world. Thus, he deliberately cultivated Yen Zhao's ability to devour chaos in order to repair this world. Upon hearing this, Jiang Wang felt a chill run down his spine. So you're saying that the dragon god has always known of your existence? Since Yen Zhao's devouring of chaos was part of the dragon god's plan, then was everything that Guan Yin had done in the Forest Ocean origin world also under his control? Then what chance did he have of defeating the dragon god? I don't know when he discovered me or when he began to play against me. However, I did become a part of his plan. This is a terrifyingly powerful opponent. However, since I've already stepped onto this chessboard, I must play my last move. Guan Yan's expression was calm, as if he was narrating a story that had nothing to do with him. It was only when I was fighting against the Forest Ocean Sacred Tribe's elders that I accidentally discovered that the dragon god had noticed me a long time ago. Their thoughts gave me information. I had no chance of winning against a god in a head-on battle in the Forest Ocean origin world. In order to hide in the shadows once more, I ignited my Sarira and manifested my Vajra, pretending that I had risked my life to exterminate the Forest Ocean sacred tribe. With only a tiny bit of my true soul left, I hid in a crack between realms. I was betting that the Forest Ocean origin world's consciousness would protect me. I made the right bet, he said calmly. Jiang Wang couldn't help but think. How could someone who had fought to the point of exhaustion and only had a tiny bit of his true soul be considered an illusion? He had clearly died to the point where he couldn't be any more dead. He couldn't be any more real. However, if that wasn't the case, there was no way he could have fooled that crafty dragon god. Guan Yin continued, under the protection of this world's consciousness, my true soul was able to survive. I had once specifically explored the possibility of a true soul cultivating, so I took this opportunity to begin my exploration. When he said this, his tone was still calm and gentle. It was as if fighting with only a tiny bit of his true soul was an extremely novel experience. Of course, it was novel, but it definitely shouldn't have been this easy. This was the true gentleness that could be nurtured by a sufficiently strong heart. He was able to calmly deal with all of the problems in this world, which was why he was able to treat this world with such gentleness and even resist it. Cultivating with your true soul is indeed an incredible achievement. Jiang Wang was filled with both respect and admiration towards Guan Yin, and he couldn't help but say, "You can say that you've opened up the history of cultivation." Guan Yin, however, was very clear-headed. He shook his head and said, "It's already very difficult to preserve one's consciousness with just a tiny bit of your true soul. Obtaining the protection of this world's consciousness and not being assimilated is something that can only be chanced upon by luck. Moreover, there are many inconveniences associated with cultivating with one's true soul, and it's far inferior to orthodox cultivation. How can one create history if they can't be replicated? Jiang Wang said with a serious expression. I think that if anyone were to escape with only a tiny bit of their true soul left, that person would definitely want to have a cultivation technique like this that would allow them to make a comeback, right? Being able to give the world another chance is already an immeasurable amount of merit in itself. Indeed, what you've said makes sense. Guan Yin was clearly very receptive to Jiang Wang's opinions, and he praised, "It's filled with Buddhist charm." Jiang Wang asked, "In the state of your true soul, how did you fight against the dragon god?" Little annoyance. Every time Jiang Wang heard Guan Yin call this name, he could hear infinite gentleness. This powerhouse who fought against the dragon god alone could not help but raise the corners of his mouth just by calling her name. After smiling for a while, he continued, "Little annoyance did very well. She firmly controlled the history of the Forest Ocean Sacred Clan, created a brand new tradition, and completed the plan that I left behind, slowly transforming the entire Forest Ocean Sacred Clan. She created an opportunity for me. Yan Zhao's power was constantly draining, and in order to open up a new path, he chose to devour the chaos. Although this fell into the dragon god's design, his own resistance against the dragon god, and the inevitable period of weakness is also a fact." Jiang Wang seemed to be deep in thought. Since the dragon god used Yan Zhao as his body, he is at the god level. Then, on the other hand, Yan Zhao can definitely influence him. It can even be said that Yan Zhao is one of his weaknesses? I have observed Yan Zhao for a whole year before coming to this conclusion. Guan Yin praised, "Your wisdom in battle is really extraordinary." No, Jiang Wang said modestly. I made the analysis based on the senior's information, and the difficulty is not the same as your insight into the truth. Moreover, I only put forward a guess, but you have confirmed the conclusion. That was what he said, but he immediately thought of something else. Then in which aspect of my wisdom is ordinary? Guan Yin, who did not use his mind-reading ability, obviously did not care about Jiang Wang's aftereffects of being ridiculed by Chenggung Xing all year round. He just continued, "The cultivation in the true soul state allowed me to gradually explore some result. The elders of the Forest Ocean Sacred Clan were all dead, and the dragon god lost the channel to directly control the Forest Ocean Sacred Clan. The severing of the dragon god's faith was another rare opportunity in itself. Based on my understanding of the Forest Ocean Sacred Clan, I began to erode the god's hilt. This process was not easy, and I spent about 200 years. I entered inch by inch and fought for it bit by bit." Guan Yan's lips curled into a smile. Simply put, when the dragon god was fighting against the Forest Ocean Origin World's world will, I temporarily replaced his deity position in the Forest Ocean Origin World and seized his god's hilt. He said it so casually, but it was earth-shattering. Jiang Wang thought of too many things in an instant, and in the end, he only asked, "So the dragon god's seat?" "Yes, I modified the mission of the dragon god's seat." Guan Yin smiled and said slowly, "Although the dragon god would sometimes issue missions to kill Yan Zhao, how could he actually let someone kill him? I am the only one who would choose to borrow your strength to kill Yan Zhao when he is at his weakest. Although Yan Zhao can be revived as long as the dragon god is alive, your one kill is enough to affect the world's origin and give the dragon god a heavy blow." Jiang Wang recalled that he had once asked Guan Yin a question in Yan's nest, but he did not get an answer at that time. At that time, he had asked, "If Yan Zhao is dead, why hasn't the exit passage been opened?" At that time, Guan Yin had replied, "This question involves the dragon god. I don't want to lie to you, so I can't answer you." Now, it seemed that the answer to that question was actually quite simple. Because the one who had secretly modified the mission of the dragon god's seat was Guan Yin. because the real dragon god was still fighting against the world will in the world's origin. Guan Yin had temporarily seized the deity position, but he could not compare to the dragon god's control over the forest ocean origin world. Since he could not directly open the exit passage, he could only do it through the tree altar. This battle is truly unimaginable. Jiang Wang sighed with emotion. So when we left the forest ocean origin world, the world's origin that we came into contact with, Guan Yin was already used to his sharp senses, and he casually said, that part of the world's origin was about to be corroded by the dragon god. While you killed Yen Xiao and gave him a heavy blow, I simply let you take away that part of the world's origin, leaving him with nothing. At the same time, it also allowed you to grow faster. At that time, I felt that perhaps you would be able to help me one day. But I never thought that this day would come so quickly. Jiang Wang had always thought that his body's origin had been blessed by the forest ocean origin world's origin when he swam past it. He never thought that he would be able to take away a part of the world's origin with Grandmaster Guan Yan's help. That experience didn't seem to have any other effect besides making the isolated island more stable and releasing more Dao energy. At least, Jiang Wang himself hadn't noticed it. But now that he thought about it, the effects were definitely not limited to that. That was the world's origin. Could it be related to the Sword Immortal's ability to unify the various inner palaces while still in the state of the four palaces? Grandmaster Guan Yin had truly sacrificed a lot in silence. Later on, when he asked for guidance in Star Moon Plains, he never mentioned any of this. All he did was patiently teach and be merciful. The more one understood Grandmaster Guan Yin, the more one would be convinced by him. Even though he had returned to the secular world, he was still a true Buddha. Senior, is it time to decide the outcome of this game of chess between you and the Dragon God? Jiang Wang asked. Right now, you could say that I'm another god of the forest ocean origin realm. But I can only be considered a false god, because this is a deity position that I've stolen, so I'm still not as orthodox as the Dragon God. Once the Dragon God obtains Alioth, he'll be able to destroy me with his Tao. In fact, as long as he returns from the world's origin, he'll be able to easily expel me. Guan Yin said, but I didn't steal his deity hilt to help him keep it safe. So, after cultivating the Tao of True Soul and grasping the deity hilt, I also stepped into the battlefield of the world's origin. He had used the calmest tone to describe the most magnificent wave. Even Xing Lu, who hadn't collapsed after death and could go to the modern realm to receive Jiang Wang, had only said that he had used some hard work. But he had used the word results to describe his Tao of True Soul, even though he had only said some. But that kind of powerful imagination had already filled Jiang Wang's imagination. First, he had stolen the Dragon God's deity hilt in the forest ocean origin realm and occupied the deity position. Then, he had directly entered the world's origin and clashed with the Dragon God. Jiang Wang could no longer fathom how powerful Master Guan Yin was. He could only recall the feeling of being nurtured when he had swum through the world's origin. Surrounded by warmth, he had experienced the most natural and comfortable state, and he had felt the beauty of his body. How could he have imagined that at the beginning of life, within the world's origin, the Dragon God, the forest ocean origin realm's world consciousness, and Master Guan Yin were fiercely fighting? Jiang Wang said very seriously, I don't know who the Dragon God is, but I've already witnessed the Dragon God's evil. I don't know how tragic this world used to be, but the bits and pieces left behind are already enough to make me grieve. This god is an evil god, and all intelligent beings have the right to kill him. You're doing a great thing. Even though I'm weak and lacking in wisdom and virtue, I'm very willing to participate and do something. He had hurriedly rushed to the forest ocean origin realm because of his promise. Right now, He wanted to draw his sword, and even wanted to follow Master Guan Yin into the world's origin because of the compassion in the depths of his human nature. Young friend Jiang, you're a righteous person. You're a Tianjiao. I've only been a fool for a long time. Guan Yin said softly, I'm not that great. I'm not staying here for thousands of people. I'm only here for one person. His eyes were filled with reverie, and his smile glowed like jade. The flower of paradise should bloom in a clean world. He had only been able to persevere until today because of his beautiful vision of the future. Jiang Wang already knew that the real Master Guan Yin was still fighting against the dragon god in the world's origin. The one who had guided him to the forest ocean origin realm was only a projection of the divine authority. He had replaced the 7-star tower with the lost star tower he had found, and he had used the 7-star tower's secret realm passage left behind by the dragon god. Just the fact that he had been guided to the forest ocean origin realm was already very ingenious. Master Guan Yin had done a lot of things in the past few years of fighting against the dragon god. I believe that day will come, Jiang Wang said resolutely. Guan Yin looked up at the Alioth star in the sky and was momentarily dazed. Young friend, wait a little longer with me. You've waited 500 years for a single flower to bloom. During these 500 years, the forest ocean origin realm had slowly calmed down, and the forest ocean sacred tribe had been educated very well. There were those who saw justice, those who saw love, and those who took on great responsibility. But under the surface of this natural success, it was Master Guan Yin who was struggling day after day against the dragon god. There were too many emotions in Jiang Wang's heart that he couldn't express. In the end, he could only sigh. These 500 years have been quiet, but they've also been magnificent. During these 500 years, it could be said that all sides were at war. The dragon god, Guan Yin, the forest ocean origin realm's consciousness, and Yen Shao all had their own ideas. However, the forest ocean origin realm's consciousness and Yen Shao were completely suppressed. As such, the only true opponents were the dragon god and Guan Yin. Master Guan Yin had once said, "There is no moon at night here. I've been watching for 500 years. He hadn't just been watching the moon all by himself for 500 years. He had been waiting for the moon on a moonless night, waiting for the flowers to bloom in a chaotic world. He had been exiled in the cracks of the world as a true spirit and resisted the dragon god by himself for 500 years. Chapter 1359. Would there be a bright moon tonight? Would there be flowers blooming this time? Jiang Wang didn't know the answer. However, he was willing to wait with Master Guan Yin. If the answer wasn't what they wanted, then he and Master Guan Yin would change the answer. The dragon god is fighting with this world's will and fighting with me, pretending that we're locked in a stalemate. On the other hand, he's secretly colluding with the stars of Alioth. He plans to control Alioth before erasing me. Guan Yin said, he's about to succeed. The opportunity we're waiting for is at the juncture of his success. Jiang Wang gripped his sword. The scabbard made of divine dragon wood had been nourished by Sauvignon yearning for a long time, and it had also been soaked in its spirituality for a long time. Now, its spirituality was deeply hidden. It was hard to imagine that it had the same origin as the giant rotten wood in front of him. Even if it was a precious material like the divine dragon wood, due to different circumstances, there would be a drastic difference in its quality. I have confidence in Senior, he said. I don't have that much confidence, Guan Yin said softly. But since I've already made my choice, then I'll do everything I can. He would have no regrets if he did his best, and he would have no regrets if he did his best. This was Jiang Wang's philosophy of life. Thus, it wasn't unreasonable to say that he and Guan Yin hit it off the first time they met. Senior, are you still fighting with him in the world's origin? Jiang Wang asked. It never stopped. Guan Yin casually explained the situation to Jiang Wang. Just now, he erased a portion of the forest ocean origin world's will in the world's origin, but at the same time, I also erased a portion of his divine source. He explained to Jiang Wang very naturally. The divine source is the foundation for him to become a god in the forest ocean origin world. You can't understand more complicated things right now, but you can simply understand it as the accumulation of the power of faith. Jiang Wang enjoyed this process of seeking knowledge, just like every time he interacted with Guan Yin in Star Moon Plain. He stepped onto the path of cultivation heavily and confusedly. He stumbled along the way, but there were also many hands that pulled him forward. The more his divine source is erased, the more Senior can control the forest ocean origin world's deity position. That's true. However, neither he nor I actually cultivate the divine Tao. We only temporarily chose this path in order to seize control of the forest ocean origin realm, and we've only begun to explore our understanding of divine authority in the past few hundred years. This is why I actually have many problems with my godhood, and he also has many flaws in his divine Tao, which is why I was able to seize the divine hilt. Guan Yin added, I cultivate the Tao of the true spirit, so he should be a legitimate member of the Dragon Clan. These words made Jiang Wang feel greatly astonished. The first thing that surprised him was that the Dragon God and Master Guan Yin were not orthodox Shinto cultivators. Moreover, it was clear that Master Guan Yin was very confident in his Tao of true spirit. He was relying on it for his entire life. Otherwise, he wouldn't have emphasized it so much after obtaining the true God hilt of the forest ocean origin world. Secondly, he was amazed by Master Guan Yin's perception. Although Master Guan Yin had said that he and the Dragon God had only just begun to explore the divine path. But that Dragon God had clearly explored the divine way before Master Guan Yin, who knew how many years ahead of him. He had laid out his plans several hundred years ahead of Master Guan Yin, yet Master Guan Yin had found a flaw in his divine way. This level of talent was simply terrifying. Furthermore, a legitimate member of the Dragon Clan? Jiang Wang couldn't help but ask, a Dragon Clan from the modern realm? A Dragon Clan from the forest ocean? I don't know much about his background yet. He's extremely cautious. Guan Yin shook his head. All I can say for now is that he's a Dragon Clan member. The Dragon Clan had been extinct since the Middle Ages in the modern realm. They had been chased away from the forest ocean. Of course, Jiang Wang already knew that there were still dragons in the river. However, they were just like mascots that didn't have much of a presence. The Dragon Clan that could truly bring fear were all in the forest ocean. What was the background of this Dragon Clan member of the forest ocean origin world? He had explored the divine Tao, become a dragon god, and even had the ambition to gaze upon the stars of the universe. The universe is truly boundless. It gives me an endless desire to explore. Jiang Wang sighed. Unfortunately, there's a limit to life. Shunlin has a lifespan of 500 years, Dongjun has a lifespan of 1,000 years. First break through the short limit, then break through the far limit. Guan Yin didn't speak of any impassioned principles. Instead, he reminded Jiang Wang to be down to earth. When you reach the end, you might be able to see even further scenery. I've learned my lesson, Jiang Wang said seriously. Actually, I know. Even though the universe is vast, you won't get lost. Guan Yin chuckled. The problem with people is that they like to be teachers. I can't avoid this either. Please don't say that. Jiang Wang was very serious. Senior is only saying this because he cares about me. To be honest, not many people would do this to me. Guan Yin's gaze was gentle. Actually, I should be the one thanking you. Thank you for allowing me to disappear from the modern realm for 500 years, and the first person I saw was you. You didn't ruin my beautiful memories of my hometown. You know, people tend to beautify the past in their memories, and your qualities and spirit have satisfied all of my unrealistic memories. I'm beginning to feel that my hometown is filled with light, and that young people are filled with hope. Please continue to move forward. No matter what the outcome is this time. I really want to know, where will you go? He spoke with such sincerity, which caused Jiang Wang to feel somewhat embarrassed. It wasn't that this number one inner palace disciple in history hadn't been praised before, and he had heard all sorts of sappy flattery before. However, the person in front of him was different. This was a senior that he acknowledged and even revered. This was the kind of person that he had once wanted to become, but was unable to become. I hope that you can watch me go, Jiang Wang finally said. I'll work hard as well, Guan Yin said seriously. He was so serious that it was a bit cute. Alioth's star was still hanging high in the sky, not very bright, but not very dark either. The forest sea gently rippled in the wind, and no one knew where it ended. How long will we have to wait? Jiang Wang asked. We're not waiting for time, but for an opportunity. I used 500 years to change the forest sea origin realm. The dragon god also used 500 years to understand me, but he didn't truly understand me, Guan Yin said calmly. When he takes over Alioth's star, it will be time for me to reveal all of the things that I've accumulated over the past 537 years. This was the calmness of someone who had done all of their hard work and could calmly face any outcome. A total of 537 years. What do I need to do at that time? Jiang Wang asked. Guan Yin said seriously, when he and I engage in our final battle, he will definitely make Yan Xiao go crazy and wreak havoc in this realm. He can distract me, transmit his power through the skull-eating beast, and even counter the will of this realm. He will definitely make this choice, which is why I need you to go in and kill Yan Xiao when the time is right. The target of this trip was still Yan Xiao. As a being born in the forest sea origin realm, killing Yan Xiao would only make him stronger, and he would not be able to resist the evildoers of this realm. This was why Guan Yin had urgently sent a voice transmission to the Star Moon Plains and asked Jiang Wang to go to the forest sea origin realm to help. Jiang Wang thought for a moment, then said, If Yan Xiao is only as strong as he was last time, then I should be able to do something else. With his current strength, he was more than 10 times stronger than before. What he had only been able to do when he fought 4 against 1 was now within his grasp. Since he had already come to the forest sea origin realm, he hoped that he could do his best to help Master Guan Yin share more of the pressure. He did not want to just make do within a safe range. He wanted to help Master Guan Yin, and he was not just doing it half-heartedly. Because this is a revived Yan Xiao, it hasn't had much time to grow. Even if it isn't in a weakened state right now, it won't be much stronger than the one you encountered last time. It won't be stronger than the limit of the inner palace. Guan Yin said, the only problem is that it will continuously absorb the dragon god's power to revive itself. This is the connection between it and a god, and even the dragon god himself cannot cut it off. However, its revival after being killed by you is different from its revival after being killed by the beings of the forest sea origin realm. The former will consume the dragon god's power, but the latter will not. In a sense, Jiang Wang and the others had truly killed Yan Xiao last time. After all, they had truly consumed a portion of the dragon god's power. So Jiang Wang asked, keep killing it? Yes. Guan Yin smiled. Keep killing it. Given Yan Zhao's chaotic intelligence, since its combat strength won't exceed the limit of the inner palace, then it definitely won't be a match for me. Jiang Wang calmly examined himself and said confidently, the more I kill it, the better, right? This was the confidence that belonged to the number one person in history. There's no need. Guan Yin shook his head. You can kill it as slowly as possible and let it die for a longer time. It's fine as long as it can't help the dragon god. As he spoke, he opened his jade-like right palm. Star sand flowed like water and coiled around Jiang Wang's arm, forming a ring that imprinted itself on it. Jiang Wang's heart skipped a beat. He could sense the power of Master Guan Yan's star tower from this imprint. He had not forgotten that power that had escorted him to the Forest Sea origin realm. I've been modifying it for a while now, and it's finally complete. Consider it a gift for you. Guan Yin said in a normal tone, if anything unexpected happens, it will bring you back to where you came from. He probably recalled his experience in the Seven Stars Valley when he received Jiang Wang, so he added, you can also go to other Seven Stars realms. But after that, you'll have to find your own way home. The more Yen Xiao was killed, the more energy the dragon god would expend. Of course, this would be more beneficial to Guan Yan's battle. But for Jiang Wang, danger was unavoidable. Yen Zhao's strength was not to be underestimated, and every time he revived, he would be in a completely new state. No matter how strong Jiang Wang was, how long could he last against the inner palace's limit? Even though Guan Yin had invited Jiang Wang to help him, he was still the one who would take the most dangerous part of the battle. He had even gifted Jiang Wang his star tower and prepared a path of retreat for Jiang Wang. If it weren't for the fact that he lacked confidence in this battle, he probably wouldn't have invited Jiang Wang. How could the dragon god, who dared to target the stars of the universe, be so easy to deal with? Perhaps Guan Yin was only calm about his own life and death, but his worries were elsewhere. Jiang Wang was well aware of this, but he didn't say anything. He only said, I know what to do. Divine power is vast, but human strength is limited. Guan Yin looked at him with a very serious expression. Little friend Jiang, I will do my best to finish him off before you run out of energy. This is my promise. The Forest Sea stretched as far as the eye could see. The Forest Sea origin realm was always dimly lit. A set of white monk robes and a set of blue robes stood side by side in front of a decaying, gigantic divine dragon tree. They were the only two bright colors on this lengthy painting. Beyond this gigantic, horizontal divine dragon tree was the hanging skull forest, which resembled a purgatory on earth. Qing Qishu had once said, in the future, the one hanging on this tree could be me, or it could be my child. He had probably wanted to say his and Qinghua's child. At this moment, Jiang Wang recalled how Qing Qishu had lightly punched him in the face back in the swallow's nest. Qing Qishu, who had called him Mr. Zhang, who had treated his random teachings as peerless scriptures, and who had wholeheartedly wanted to get close to Qinghua. Was he supposed to be under the dragon god's control and live an eternal life of violence and slaughter? Was his head supposed to be hanging on a tree and becoming its nutrients? Was his family and friends the same as him, never able to see the end of the world? In the end, Mr. Zhang simply looked at Guan Yin and said, Senior, your battle will be an even more difficult one. Please fight with all your heart and don't think about this side. Before my sword breaks, Yen Xiao will definitely not affect you. He will only continue to make the dragon god bleed. This is my promise. He couldn't help but stretch out his hand and extend it in front of Guan Yin. Let us accomplish this great task together in this faraway galaxy, in this place that perhaps no one knows of. All right. Guan Yin smiled warmly and reached out to shake Qing Qishu's hand. In this faraway galaxy, in this place that no one knows of. In the vast universe, what didn't seem like dust. In the boundless space and time, the Forest Sea origin realm was indeed a faraway place that no one knew of. In this place, no matter what happened, no matter what sacrifices were made, no matter how dazzling one's performance, they were all destined to remain silent in the universe, so lonely that there would be no echo. They were the silent dust of the universe. Since time immemorial, there had been people who sought benefits and fame. For the sake of immediate benefits, they dared to hang their heads on their belt. For the sake of glory, they dared to tread on a sea of fire. However, in a place like the Forest Sea origin realm, There was no applause, no cheers. No matter how great a journey was, it could only quietly come to an end. The beginning and the end were all lonely. They sought benefits but failed to obtain them. They sought fame but failed to obtain them. However, it was precisely in this place. Guanyin, the Xiankong Temple's #1 perceptive ability in the past 500 years, was determined to stay here and never become a Buddha. Jiang Wang, the #1 inner palace disciple in history, gave up on the Battle of Xingyue Plains and went alone. The top Tianjiao of the modern realm 500 years ago, and the top Tianjiao of the modern realm 500 years later, the two of them decided to work together in this unknown place to fight against the terrifying existence that was trying to control the stars of the universe. One was for love, the other was for faith. At the same time, they also felt pity for the Forest Sea origin realm. No one in the Forest Sea sacred race praised Guanyan's name. Apart from Granny Qinghua and Qingbaji, there were probably not many people who remembered that Jiang Wang had come here. However, they still decided to do this. Guanyin had already fought alone for 537 years. Today, Jiang Wang was going to fight. The two of them stood in front of the giant wall of rotten wood, silently waiting for an opportunity to appear. The rotten wood had no life force to speak of, but it still hadn't mixed with the soil. If the rotten wood had a spirit, then it was unknown what it was persisting for. Jiang Wang explored the inner palace while waiting. He didn't want to miss any time, because the heavy matters of the past were too pressing. When Guanyin spoke, he spoke. When Guanyin didn't speak, he cultivated. Meanwhile, Guanyin focused most of his energy on the world origin of this realm, on the dragon god. The two of them waited until the sky dimmed, and the entire world turned completely dark. The Forest Sea origin realm's nighttime was terrifying. Ever since the night invasion had been activated, it had never stopped wreaking havoc. If there were vengeful spirits in this realm, the night breeze should have been filled with the cries of ghosts. Unfortunately, even the cries of ghosts didn't exist. Even if there were vengeful spirits, they would have been devoured by Yen Shao. The primal chaos invasion couldn't disturb the two of them. The ring of stars on Jiang Wang's hand glowed faintly, protecting him from the night invasion. The scabbard made of divine dragon wood also glowed faintly, as if it was expelling something, just like a lit divine dragon incense. He didn't know it had such a wonderful effect. Guanyin praised, "One can see the sword just by looking at the scabbard. Your sword is getting better and better." Jiang Wang was sometimes shy when it came to praises for himself. However, he accepted all of the praises for his sword, because he was indeed very proud of himself. "It has indeed accompanied me for a very long time. It's the best weapon for me, and it's also something I love dearly." Lien Kei's custom-made sword nurturing technique was indeed very useful, and after he reached Heaven's Palace, he used the light of the 5 divine abilities to nurture his sword, which greatly benefited the Sauvignon Yearning's spirituality. Most famed artifacts in the world were sentient beings that accompanied their masters. Over a long period of time, an unparalleled tacit understanding was born, and a spirituality that was compatible with their bodies was born. Even if it was a weapon used by a peerless perfected lord, if it hadn't reached the legendary stage of spirituality transformation, once it left its original master, it would have to start all over again. If it left Jiang Mengxiong, even Qi's famed artifact list wouldn't be able to rank it as #1. The reason why spirituality transformation was said to be a legend was because it was rarely seen in ancient times. In short, no matter how strong a weapon was, it still had to rely on the performance of the cultivator. Therefore, the famed artifact list of each country usually ranked the strength of the cultivator, and not the weapon itself. In response to Jiang Wang's praise, the Sauvignon Yearning made a soft hum in the scabbard, as if it was responding. The extremely soft hum of the sword made the night even lonelier. However, Jiang Wang and Guanyin were both people who were used to loneliness. "Little friend Jiang, do you have anyone you like?" Guan Yin looked up at the empty night sky and suddenly asked. Jiang Wang was stunned for a moment, then said, I don't really know. You don't know, but you do, Guan Yin said softly. Perhaps. I've never asked myself. Jiang Wang lowered his eyes and said, There's only one heart in a person's heart, and it can't hold too many things. Guan Yin had always known that this young man who wasn't even 20 yet had an extremely heavy heart. He hadn't even reached the age of 20 yet, but he still carried a heavy burden on his shoulders. However, he didn't try to console him. Instead, he just said to himself, liking someone is a very beautiful thing. You're walking in a very, very dark night and you're looking ahead as if there's nothing there. But if there's someone in your heart, then everything will exist. For 500 years, the plenilune serpent had always been looking at little annoyance. They were in the same realm, but they couldn't see each other. They could only hide it from each other. It was as if there was nothing there, but it was also as if they had everything. That's really very good. Jiang Wang only said this one sentence before falling silent. He kept the words, but I can't, in his heart. The terrifying night of the forest ocean origin realm couldn't disturb them in the slightest. The two of them fell silent as they waited for the final moment. In the land of divine shadow, in a bookstore that had been around for a long time, a white-haired old woman was quietly reading a book. The title of the book was 8 Methods for Planting Spiritual Silk Flowers. The author was unknown. So many years had passed, and she had read every single book here countless times. She remembered every single word and every single crease. However, she still came here to read from time to time. She couldn't share Guan Yan's story with any of her clansmen. She had been a young girl yearning for love, but time had already passed. The traces of that handsome monk were everywhere. In that clear stream, in that flower bed, and in her heart. He had changed the direction of the entire forest ocean sacred tribe. He had changed the past, and he had also changed the future. However, she could only proclaim the will of the dragon god. He was everywhere, but she could only pretend that he wasn't there. It was only in this bookstore that there was a secret tacit understanding between them. She flipped through every single ancient book, imagining what that person had used as a reference and what he had changed when he left behind these contents. What he had made up, or what he wanted to say to her, it was as if she was conversing with that person. As a reader and an author, they had passed through time and life and death to communicate in silence. For example, in this 8 Methods for Planting Spiritual Silk Flowers, on the 13th page, the 19th page, the 4th page, and the 22nd page, the 6th and 7th page, they all had the same small words, little trouble. She had only discovered these after he had left for many years. These romantic feelings hidden in subtle corners supported her through life. Until today. Today, she had deep wrinkles and white hair. However, as she sat here and flipped through the book, looking at those small words, it was as if she had seen them for the first time. Her eyes shone, and her heart softened. No one knew about her secret thoughts, and their romance was hidden deep within. She enjoyed these moments. Of course, it was difficult to enjoy life. The Azure Saintess walked in at this moment. She leaned against the door and looked at the white-haired old woman, watching her reading as usual. Her skinny fingers caressed the paper, and there was actually a gentleness of caressing a lover's cheek. High Priestess. She opened her mouth. The old priestess reluctantly looked away from the book and looked at Qing Ji, full of kindness. What is it, Qinghua? If Jiang Wang were here, he would discover that Qinghua was much more haggard than she had been back then. In the past, she had been filled with the power of life. Now, her vitality was still there, but her brows were full of fatigue and her eyes were slightly red. I'm very confused, Qinghua said. Child, what are you confused about? The annoying old woman asked. Qinghua stretched out a finger and gently slid it across the bookshelf beside her. Her gaze darted up and down, as if she was looking for a book that she could read, a book that could calm her. However, it was very difficult for her to stop for a book. Why has the envoy of the dragon god already killed Yen Xiao? Why has Yen Xiao reappeared? She asked. Because, the annoying old woman was interrupted as soon as she opened her mouth. It was as if Qinghua didn't need to answer at all. She already had her answer. Is it because the evil in the world can't be eradicated? As Qinghua said this, she turned her head and looked at the old woman's wrinkled face with bloodshot eyes. Is it because we are sinful? The annoying old woman frowned. Why do you say that? What have you come into contact with in private? There was really no need to ask this question. The saint of Qingji could naturally come into contact with the dragon god. However, the annoying old woman couldn't bear to. Qinghua closed her eyes as if in great pain. I've been hearing some strange voices recently, the annoying old woman said. Where there is day, there is night. Where there is good, there is evil. The evil in the world cannot be eradicated. However, the good in the world will not disappear either. Yesterday's Yen Xiao died, and today's Yen Xiao was reborn. However, if you could kill it yesterday, you can kill it again tomorrow. She sighed. In the future, without my permission, you are not allowed to listen to the oracle. Chapter 1360. The annoying granny was very clear about what had happened. For so many years, she had followed the will of her lover and firmly controlled the direction of the sacred race. She had believed in the dragon god since she was a child. She believed that the dragon god was great and flawless. But the heavens were unpredictable, and the dragon god seemed to have encountered some problems. Oracles were often chaotic and incomprehensible in the beginning. There were frequent occurrences of miracles and divine decrees, but the words were incoherent and contradictory, pointing to this and that. She only listened to the oracles that were beneficial to the future of the sacred race and regarded them as the true decree. She chose to turn a deaf ear to those chaotic oracles. As for what was beneficial to the future of the sacred race, Guan Yin had already made a detailed list. And after so many years, she slowly had her own understanding. Peaceful days, fair and just rules, kindness, courage, commitment, these beautiful qualities. The future of the sacred race should be peaceful and happy. It was also at this time that she discovered and confirmed she believed in Guan Yin more than the dragon god. Compared to the dragon god, she believed in the beautiful future of the sacred race more. Guan Yin had never denied the dragon god in front of her. Even when he died, he only said that he had left a way to deal with Yen Xiao. But she had eyes to see, and she had a heart to feel. She knew what was the best choice for the sacred race. Many young sacred race members thought that today's life was natural. They suffered because of the tradition of hunting, and were resentful because of the invasion of the night. She had experienced the dark times and knew what the more painful and torturous days were like. The enlightenment of the sacred race was a method developed by Guan Yin, but for hundreds of years, the specific implementation was completed by her bit by bit. The one who turned everything that Guan Yin had envisioned into reality was her incessant stitching day and night. She realized that the oracles of chaos were slowly eroding her heart, trying to lead her to the chaotic side. As time passed and the chaos accumulated, she gradually became unable to resist. So she began to choose the Azure Saintess, changing generations to listen to the oracles in her place. If the Azure Saintess was affected by the oracles of chaos, she had to live in the sacrificial chamber for 10 years. If there were no abnormalities for 10 years, she could return to the sacred race and live a normal life. If it was just a normal rotation and there was no disorder, then there was no need for this. She, on the other hand, had always held the position of a priestess, which meant that she held the right to interpret the oracle, so that the oracle would never deviate from its path. Thus, they lived in peace for hundreds of years. In later years, the oracles were not as frequent, and the number of times the oracles were chaotic became less and less. Everything was going in the right direction, and the dragon god seemed to be slowly returning to normal. However, Azure Flower looked like she'd heard those chaotic oracles again, and was already affected. Although this day came too early, it was time for him to change it out. Of course, it was cruel to let a young girl live alone in the sacrificial chamber for 10 years, but she had no other choice. The old woman knew very well what would happen to those who were completely controlled by the divine edict of chaos. Over the long years, some saintesses had been killed by her own hands. As for the next saintess of Azure, she had originally favored little Guerre, so she had always kept her by her side to teach her. In another 10 years or so, Blue and White Flower would go and live on her own. She would be able to take over the task of listening to the god. However, it was clearly not possible now. Little Guerre was still too young, so who else in the clan was suitable? The old priestess of the Forest Ocean Sacred Clan had a lot on her mind, and her wrinkles were deep. Why would something happen to Blue and White Flower now? She was kind-hearted and strong-willed, and had only been the Saintess of Azure for a few years. She hadn't heard many oracles in total. Usually, the Saintess would only be affected by dozens of oracles of chaos and lose her mind. Did something happen to the dragon god again? The white-haired old woman looked at Blue and White Flower with a worried expression. "I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it." Blue and White Flower closed her eyes tightly and covered her ears, her expression pained. "But when I sleep, it rings in my heart. When I walk, it rings in my ears. No matter what I do or where I go, it rings. I don't want to hear it, but I can't not listen. I am the Saintess of Azure, and I was born to listen to the will of the gods. This is the meaning of my existence, my value. Listen to me, child." The annoying old woman put the book in her hands back on the shelf, her movements gentle. She stood up from the recliner, walked in front of Blue and White Flower, and gently hugged her. She had watched this child grow up from a young age, watching how she grew from a shy little girl to a beauty that the sacred warriors couldn't take their eyes off. She knew her pain, and could feel her struggle. She gently stroked her long hair. "You are Blue and White Flower. You were born for yourself, and the meaning of your existence is to make yourself happy. This isn't some oracles, and you don't need to show any value. Child, do you know? Your existence itself is already extremely precious to me. What you said is different. Why is it different?" Blue and White Flower hugged her head with both hands. Her voice was even more pained, and she even sounded like she was about to cry. "Priestess, Granny, Dragon God, what should I do? What should I do? What's different?" The annoying old woman gently stroked her voice gentle. "Tell me, what did you hear?" Blue and White Flower sobbed. "I heard, poof!" A cold light flashed, and a short dagger pierced the annoying old woman's abdomen. Bang! Blue and White Flower were immediately pushed away by a palm. Her entire body crashed into the door of the study, and she fell to the ground. The annoying old woman took a few steps back and fell back into the recliner. Her aura became chaotic. It wasn't that she hadn't been on guard against Blue and White Flower. She had seen many holy maidens affected by the oracles of chaos, and knew that their actions were uncontrollable. While she was concerned about Blue and White Flower, she didn't let down her guard. With Blue and White Flower's strength, she shouldn't have been able to hurt her. But just now, the ravings of the gods had suddenly entered her ears. It was the oracles of chaos that she hadn't personally heard in a long time. She had clearly taken the initiative to disconnect for a long time. The oracles of chaos had attacked her mental defenses, causing her to fall into a momentary daze. That was why Blue and White Flower had stabbed her. This dagger had been smeared with an unknown, strange substance. She could feel a strange power rapidly corroding her body. Was I wrong? She thought. A gust of evening wind blew in, swaying the candlelight in the study, causing the bookshelves to dim yellow. It made a lonely whirlwind, passing by the white-haired old woman lying on the recliner and the beautiful woman standing in front of the door. Then, it flew out of the room. Compared to the environment outside, the divine Shadowland was indeed fresh and bright. However, the night here was still tranquil. Without the divine dragon incense, no one dared to walk outside. The divine dragon tree extended into the distance. Numerous fruit houses hung from the branches, each one a warm home. There was probably no other place in the entire forest ocean origin realm that could see the lights of tens of thousands of homes. The evening wind blew gently through the empty forest. It just so happened to sweep past a window. The fruit house was decorated with warm candlelight. A cute girl sat in front of the dressing table, and her beautiful mother was currently unbraiding her hair. A man was in the other corner of the room, using a small knife. He was seriously sharpening an arrow. Tonight's sleep and tomorrow's hunt. The days flowed like this. In order to avoid accidentally pulling her daughter's hair and hurting her, the mother's movements were delicate and gentle. The girl was getting sleepy from waiting. She looked at herself in the mirror and yawned. Her sleepy eyes instantly widened in fear. The mother's beautiful and gentle eyes in the mirror suddenly became bloodshot. The girl felt her hair being pulled taut, and her head involuntarily tilted backwards. Her screams and cries were all restrained within the fruit house. Like the candlelight, they were unable to escape the darkness of the night. The night flowed like water, and the east house moved to the west house. In this somewhat aged fruit house, an elderly woman leaned against the headboard with a kind expression on her face. A stout man sat by the bed with a bowl of meat soup in his hands, feeding her spoonful by spoonful. Her eyes were bloodshot at some point in time. The old woman closed her mouth and bit the spoon in half. "Mother!" The man was shocked. He reached out to grab the spoon to prevent his mother from swallowing the soup. However, a withered hand had already wrapped around his neck. This was an unusual night. Anyone who had listened to the oracle for Saintess Ching, regardless of whether or not they had done anything out of line, had changed on this night. In other words, little troublesome priestess should have already anticipated the possible consequences when she had chosen Saintess Ching to listen to the oracle in her place. The safest choice was, of course, to secretly kill all the saintesses who had abdicated. This way, no matter what problems there were with the oracle of chaos, it would not become a problem. However, little troublesome priestess did not choose that. She would rather use 10 years to sift through the candidates and use more time to wait. And the cause of yesterday was the effect of today. In the distant horizon, Alioth had already disappeared. Every night in the forest ocean origin world, it was stingy with its light. It was day and night. However, in a pair of vertical pupils that could see through time, it was still shining brightly in that direction, and it was getting brighter and brighter. Raging waves were surging in the vast and boundless origin sea. A golden divine dragon leaped into the air, fighting with all its might against its opponent. It had two enemies, one in front and one behind it. The one in front was a clumsy and tall tree. As its branches whipped about, it shook the entire origin sea. Behind him was a handsome monk in white robes who was holding a verdant scepter in his hand. This golden divine dragon was naturally the dragon god. To be able to simultaneously suppress the forest ocean origin world's world consciousness and seize the forest ocean true god's divine hilt in the origin sea, the dragon god's strength was evident. However, this was still not his true strength. Perhaps he was afraid of the forest ocean origin world's world consciousness's near-death counterattack, or perhaps he was not strong enough to defeat Guanyin, so he was unwilling to take the risk. In any case, the dragon god firmly controlled the situation of the battle and firmly grasped the scales of victory. He no longer retreated, nor did he oppress his opponent. This delicate balance made the situation of the battle very anxious. When it came to resisting the dragon god, Guanyin and the forest ocean origin world's world consciousness clearly had a certain level of tacit understanding. They tried their best to cooperate, but this cooperation was not harmonious. At most, they each occupied an area and fought their own battles. The world consciousness was only a vague term, and it could not be completely equated to the intelligence of intelligent lifeforms. The forest ocean origin world's world consciousness's actions and logic were closer to some kind of instinct. It instinctively protected the forest ocean origin world, instinctively reacted to hostility, and instinctively counterattacked. However, it could not be said that it was completely without intelligence. It was just that the thinking of the world consciousness was not the same as the thinking of intelligent lifeforms. As a world consciousness, it was sometimes frighteningly old-fashioned. For example, Yen Xiao was clearly an evil bird under the dragon god's control, but it was also viewed as a native of this world and had never been targeted by the forest ocean origin world's world consciousness. Sometimes, the will of the world would have a vague and unpredictable choice. For example, it had chosen to protect an outsider like Guanyin back then. The world consciousness did not have human personality, morals, or emotions, but it was not just a world's natural instinct to protect itself. It could be said to be very simple, but it could also be said to be very complicated. Since ancient times, no one had been able to truly understand the world consciousness. However, there was one thing that was without a doubt: being able to come into contact with the world consciousness itself was already extraordinary. To the vast majority of people, perhaps they would never be able to sense the existence of the world consciousness in their entire lives. When it came to this battle in the Origin Sea, Guanyin had been the one leading and coordinating the entire battle. He had to research the dragon god and the world consciousness. The three sides had been entangled in this battle for hundreds of years. At this point in time, the forest ocean origin world's origin sea was divided into three colors. About 3/6 of it was the same brilliant gold as the dragon god. About 2/6 of it was jade green in color, and only the remaining 1/6 was as clear as water, shining in the same light as Guanyin. From the looks of it, Guanyin seemed to be too weak. However, only those who were personally involved in the battle could clearly see just how terrifying this monk was. While the dragon god was completely suppressing the will of the world, he had entered the battle dressed in monk robes and entered the Origin Sea alone. From nothing, he had forcibly snatched away 1/6 of the Origin Sea's share between the dragon god's fingers. The forest ocean origin world's world consciousness, which had the home field advantage, could only retreat under the dragon god's attacks, and its share of the Origin Sea grew smaller and smaller. Guanyin, who seemed to be the weakest and least relied on, was able to maintain a trend of growth throughout the endless battle day and night. He had even delayed the world consciousness's decline. What they were fighting for was not just the Origin Sea, but the world itself, and at this moment, the dragon god stood high in the sky and looked down. "Little monk, it's time for all of this to end." He indeed did not understand this monk well enough. After fighting for so long, he still felt like he was looking at flowers in the fog. However, he understood that the Forest Ocean Holy Clan had a special meaning to Guanyin, and that priest was crucial to Guanyin. That was enough. Was it not? After so many years of planning and planning, it was indeed time to end it. After fighting in this Origin Sea for hundreds of years, even an existence like him could not help but feel exhausted. As soon as this voice fell, the entire Origin Sea shook and echoed. Waves roared and swept across. It was over. It was over. It was over. And Guanyin, who was wearing the white lunar monk robe, just looked up at this god quietly. He held the scepter that represented the forest ocean true god's divine handle and took a step forward. The raging waves stopped and the echoes dissipated. One step was enough to level the waves. A divine handle was the authority of a god. It represented the highest control over the power of faith. Guanyin held this green scepter. It could be said that he held the dragon god's faith and was an enemy of the dragon god. And his expression was so calm. He only said, "Blackmail is not the method of a righteous god. Scheming to gain benefits is not the path of the great path. For a despicable existence like you, the more you spread your teachings, the worse the disaster will be. It's time to end it. Ridiculous. Ridiculous. The dragon god laughed. What bullsh *t divine path is this? Do you think I care? You can have the divine handle and deity position if you want, but I'll give it to you to play with. The bright golden waves of the origin sea firmly resisted the clear waves, and in his bright golden vertical pupils, the appearance of the Alioth star was already reflected. In the long battle, he had already captured the Alioth star. Today was a good opportunity to enter. After controlling half of the origin sea and capturing the Alioth star, he indeed did not need the deity position of the forest ocean origin world's true god. No matter how one looked at it, he had enough confidence to obtain the final victory. But even so, at this critical juncture, he still used the remaining influence of the deity position to shake the Azure Saintess and attack the priest called Little Annoyance. He even affected the entire Forest Ocean Holy Clan and caused a bloody massacre. No matter what methods Guanyin had, he had to make a choice today. Should he interfere with the dragon god's occupation of the Alioth star, or should he escape to save Little Annoyance and the Forest Ocean Holy Clan? The origin sea of the world origin sea was turbulent. Only the manifestation of the Forest Ocean origin world's will was still waving its branches and attacking the dragon god. It was as if it was completely unaware of what was happening. The land of divine shadow in the study room. The white-haired old woman fell back into the recliner. She struggled to resist the power that was eroding her body. She could not make a sound or move. Blue Flower, who had finally regained her footing, pulled out a black dagger and walked toward her resolutely. At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded from outside. Blue Flower. Qingbaji, whose hair was tied into 8 braids, jumped into the study room. He held his javelin horizontally and said with a serious expression, "What are you doing? Our hunting, and even the arrival of the dragon god's emissary, are all meaningless." Blue Flower stopped and turned around. She asked, "Yen Shao has come back from the dead. Are you afraid? You told me the other day that you don't know when these days will end." "I don't deny my fear," Qingbaji said. "But for now you should stay away from the priest." Blue Flower ignored him and asked again, "Are you sad about Qing Qishu's death?" "I don't like him, but I do feel sad for him." Qingbaji frowned. "What are you trying to say? You're not right today. You don't know what's wrong." Qinghua shook her head and smiled strangely. "Do you know what caused all of this? Why did Qishu die for no reason? Why was it that after so many years, generation after generation of warriors had died at the hands of Xiang Shou, the ending had not changed at all? The priest interprets the oracle and guides the way forward. Why is it making us more and more difficult? Who do you think is wrong? Baji?" Qingbaji gripped his spear. "Granny Priest watched us grow up. There must be some misunderstanding. Put down your dagger. Do you love me?" Blue Flower asked. Qingbaji said bitterly, "You've always known my feelings. Why ask when you already know?" He was sad not because Blue Flower doubted his feelings, but because she used his feelings as a weapon. "If you love me, then help me kill her," Blue Flower said. "Don't you think she's been a priest for too long? So many years have passed, but our situation hasn't changed at all. The great holy race is still holed up in the land of God's shadow. She betrayed the oracle and will be abandoned by the gods one day. Can you imagine that situation? It's time to change." She looked at Qingbaji. "In the future, I'll be the priest and you'll be the leader. We'll obey the gods' orders and make the holy race stronger together. What do you think?" Looking at the beautiful face in front of him, Qingbaji's heart was in turmoil. But his hands were steady. "Blue Flower, you better calm down. You're not clear-headed right now. I'm a warrior of the holy race and have a responsibility. I won't allow you to hurt a priest. I'm very clear-headed. You're still confused." Blue Flower said, when Chishu left, he said he'd come back. When Yen Xiao died, I thought the nightmare was over. But what's changed? We're still like pigs and dogs, trapped in this place. We never know what's at the end of the world. We can only watch as our friends and family die. There's nothing we can do. Why do we have to do this? Since it's all meaningless, why do we have to persist? Why don't we change our path and follow the dragon god's true will? The gods will shine on us. Qing Baji shook his head. No, you can't hurt Granny. I can promise you anything else, but not this. Blue Flower looked at him coldly. Her eyes were like knives. You can't compare to Chishu. He's willing to do anything for me. Qing Baji gripped his spear and didn't say anything. At this moment, a sharp sound pierced through the air. Blue Flower quickly retreated and decisively swung her dagger, deflecting an arrow. The arrow sank into the ground, its tail feathers still trembling. It was clear that the attacker had used a lot of force and was determined to shoot. Qing Jui, whose bow was fully drawn, floated down and looked at Blue Flower. You don't understand Chishu at all. If he saw you today, he'd definitely regret loving you. If you dare take another step, die. Blue Flower held her dagger and looked at Qing Jui with reddened eyes. She smiled sadly. I know you won't kill me because you have me in your heart. Whoosh! What answered her was an arrow aimed at her throat. Blue Flower had no choice but to take 2 steps back to avoid the arrow. At the same time, she got further and further away from the old woman on the recliner. Qing Jui's voice was cold. I have you in my heart. I'm not the reason you hurt Granny Priest. I know very well who's really protecting this place. Hundreds of years of painstaking effort isn't something you can slander with just a few words. The Forest Ocean Holy Race can't do without Granny Priest, but it can do without me and without you. Ha ha! Blue Flower laughed. Slander? She looked at Qing Jui and then at Qing Baji. As the Saint of Azure, I listened to the oracle. Do you know what the dragon god said? Qing Jui said, what the dragon god said is not up to you. How the oracle is interpreted is Granny Priest's business. Blue Flower looked at him. You don't believe me? She looked at Qing Baji. You don't believe me either? I don't believe you now, Qing Jui said directly. Qing Baji said, all these years, no matter who the saint is, the oracle has always been interpreted by Granny Priest. What if her interpretation is always contrary to the oracle? Blue Flower asked hatefully. If I can prove this, as the holy race's warriors, you've been blessed with divine power for so many years. What choice do you have now? Chapter 1361. This was a question that interrogated their souls. Qing Baji, Qing Juj, and even Qing Chishu. From a young age, they had tempered their bodies and honed their martial arts skills, standing out from the other children of their age. They had been bathed in divine grace at the altar of the tree, and only then had they obtained divine strength and become respected warriors of the holy race, possessing combat strength that surpassed that of mortals. Faith in the dragon god wasn't something that happened in a few months or years. It was passed down from generation to generation. Their faith in the dragon god was the most devout of the Sunhai sacred clan. This was because their faith directly affected their strength. And now, Azure Flower was saying that the annoying Granny had always deviated from the true meaning of the oracle? There's no need to prove it, Qing Jui said. At this moment, are you representing yourself or the dragon god? What's the difference? I am the Azure Saintess, the dragon god's representative. The oracle has entered my ears, and I will repeat it word by word. Azure Flower said, I will not distort the dragon god's will, nor will I hide it. Isn't this the duty of a servant of the dragon god? What is the oracle you heard? Qing Jui asked. Of course it's to kill this blasphemer and guide the sacred clan on the right path. Azure Flower said seriously. Otherwise, why do you think I can harm her? It was the dragon god who took back her power. I will not obey this oracle, Qing Baji said angrily. Qingji said, the annoying granny is like our mother. She sewed my clothes, cooked my food, taught me how to be a human, raised me. If the dragon god loved, would he have told his son to kill his mother? Would he have told his mother to kill her son? It was the dragon god who gave us food and clothing. It was the dragon god who protected us. It was the dragon god who led us out of the darkness. It was the dragon god who gave us a future. Azure Flower sang with reverence, then looked at the two sacred clan warriors. You may be confused by what you see, but the dragon god will lead us to the light. The moment she chose to blaspheme the dragon god, the moment she deviated from the oracle, she was no longer our annoying granny, but a blasphemer who committed the most heinous crimes. Don't forget where your power comes from. Do you want to blaspheme the dragon god as well? No. Granny was the one who raised us. Granny was the one who found food for us. Granny was the one who protected our land. Granny was the one who did her best to shine here. It was Granny Shaowan, not God. Qing Jui's bow was still fully drawn. He said, the gods sent down their godly power, and I also cultivated. Gods need faith, and I have never been absent from any of the sacrifices. I have never been unfaithful. But if God's decree is to kill Granny Priest, then this God. I don't believe it. These were blasphemous words. The God-forsaken will be abandoned by God. Without divine power, the so-called sacred warriors were no more than ordinary people with slightly stronger bodies. However, 1 breath passed, 2 breaths passed, 3 breaths passed. Many breaths passed. There were no changes to the blue 9-leaf cultivator's body. His muscles were still strong, and his bow was still steady. His power wasn't taken back because of his blasphemy, nor was there any divine punishment. Looks like this isn't God's will, but your will. Qing Baji gripped his javelin and looked at Qinghua coldly. Stay away from Granny. He was intimidated by the murderous intent. Qinghua couldn't help but take a few more steps back. How can this be? She was confused and confused. She didn't know what had gone wrong. It was God, it was God, it was God's will. The 3 young people confronted each other on this side of the study. Their emotions were intense and complicated. No one noticed that the white-haired old woman slumped on the recliner had tears streaming down her face. Her lips trembled, but she couldn't say a word for a long time. Granny, what's wrong? Qing Jui was the first to notice that something was wrong. He rushed to the annoying old woman and put away his bow. He wanted to support her, but then he remembered Granny's injuries and didn't dare to move. He only asked anxiously, what's wrong? In the midst of the chaos, Qinghua also turned to look at the kind-looking old woman. Qing Baji held his javelin horizontally and stood in front of her. He looked at her with a wary expression. Qinghua was stunned again. She had never seen such a strange expression on these people's faces. But God's decree, the annoying old lady finally spoke in a trembling voice. Did you hear that? Hear what? Qing Jui was at a loss. Tears welled up in her wrinkles. The annoying old woman had been fighting against the strange power of the dagger. At the same time, she was fighting against the chaotic god's decree. But just now, the chaotic god's decree that troubled her had been replaced by a new one. This was the aura she was very familiar with. It was the aura of a true decree. And this god's decree only had 2 words, little trouble. These 2 words appeared in her heart and rang in her ears. It had appeared countless times in her dreams. I heard it, Qinghua said in a daze. As the Saintess of Azure, she naturally wouldn't miss the god's decree. But why? Why would the true God call out the annoying old woman's name? And it was so delicate and gentle, Qinghua verified that the voice was real. It made the annoying old woman confirm that it wasn't a hallucination in her trance. She went mute after half an hour. Her skinny hands slowly came up and covered her face. She trembled and trembled, but she couldn't completely cover it. She was like a child, like a child who had been wronged to the extreme. She cried dryly and hoarsely. She understood. Everything was clear. Why were there two completely contradictory voices of the gods after so many years? Why did Guan Yin say to her when he was at the end of his life, "I will love you in my way forever"? She finally understood. When she was looking for chapters and sentences in this bookroom, she saw some sentences that she couldn't completely understand before. You want to know what you should believe in: peace, health, happiness, or God. Buddha said that he can't satisfy all your wishes. I said that if I were Buddha, I wouldn't be like this. She had already shattered her golden body and burned her relic. She still said that she was Buddha. In fact, she had become a god. The source of that dark period was never just those elders. It was never just Yen Shao. It should be the source of the chaotic god's decree, which was the original dragon god. And for so many years, Guan Yin had always been the god's fighter. As the other half of the god, he had always been by her side. Those correct decrees that she recognized were all densely packed love over a long period of time. They were all the confessions that Guan Yin had given her after every short victory in a battle. She had never known that she was sincerely loved. But she had never known that he was still in love. Looking at the annoying grandma, who was covering her face and crying, Qing Jui and Qing Baji were both stunned. They didn't know what to do. In their impression, the granny was both kind and strict. She was tolerant and tenacious. For the Holy Clan, she could force Qin Qishu to hunt. But she would also stay up late to sew Qin Qishu's invisible clothes the night before he went to fight in the forest of hanging skulls. She took care of the clan's affairs, big and small. She worked hard for 10 years, 100 years, and hundreds of years. When had she ever been so weak? When had she ever cried like this? Looking at the annoying grandma, Qing Hua suddenly couldn't hold the dagger anymore. Her fingers loosened and it fell to the ground. Clang! She squatted on the ground. What have I done? She shook her head in pain. She was frightened and bewildered. She hugged her head and cried bitterly. What have I done? Why did I become like this? I don't know. Whoa, Qishu. Tell me what you have done. Qing Jui stepped forward. She gritted her teeth and pulled out her dagger. She was about to kill her. Qing Baji moved his javelin away. In the end, he didn't stop her. Don't hurt her. The white-haired old woman on the recliner finally calmed down. She took a deep breath and pulled the dagger out of her abdomen. After a muffled groan, she said, "It's not her fault. She couldn't control herself." Her body was in pain, but her eyes were calm and tranquil. After hundreds of years of suffering, she finally had someone to rely on and her heart returned to. Qing Hua stared blankly at the kind old woman. Her eyes were hazy with tears. But the god, you said you were the Azure Saintess and wanted to listen to the god's voice. You said we should follow the dragon god's guidance. The annoying grandma sat up slightly. She looked at her and said, "But Qing Hua, do you really know what will happen if we follow the dragon god's guidance completely? We've walked this path a long time ago. It was hundreds of years ago during the Dark Ages. We've walked this path. It was the night invasion that killed countless competing tribes and countless clansmen. Everyone thought that the Saintess could only receive vague fragments of the divine decree because I used the tree altar to secretly make arrangements so that I could interpret the divine decree alone. But in fact, you could hear it clearly at that time, right? The divine decree broke through my arrangements and transmitted to you to influence you. Then do you remember the divine decree at the forest altar last time?" The annoying grandma asked. "The god told us to kill the alien and offer our heads to Yen Shao. The god also told us to help the dragon god's emissary kill Yen Shao. The god is so contradictory. Which way should we go? I think the god might not know what's right and wrong. But for us who truly live in this world and spend every day with our clansmen, we should know what's the better choice, right?" Her eyes were filled with compassion. Child, we believe in the God, but what do we believe in? We believe in a great existence only because of reverence, only because of worship, belief for the sake of belief? No. We believe in the God because we hope to be protected, blessed, and peaceful. We hope that our family and friends are safe and that our brothers and sisters are happy. Our belief has something to ask for. We want to get rid of this painful reincarnation. That's why we believe. What do we believe in? In the divine dragon forest at night, in front of the old mother's sickbed, the old woman reached out and grabbed her son's neck. She could kill him with just a twist. But she couldn't twist it down no matter how hard she tried. The stout man could smash the old woman to death with one punch, but he just protected his neck with difficulty. He shouted with a red face, "Mother?" The old woman met his eyes and felt as if she was struck by lightning. She loosened her hand and slapped herself in the face while crying. From now on, I don't believe in the God. In the treehouse of the family of 3. The beautiful woman who was pulling her daughter's hair back and was about to use her left hand to chop down suddenly turned her elbow, crack. Using his own strength, he bent his entire left arm in half from the elbow and turned it upside down. She would rather her face twitch in pain than use her hand to chop down. The child was so scared that she cried loudly and was snatched away by the man. In her father's arms she still cried, "Mother, what's wrong with you?" I'm sorry. The Saintess of Qing in front of the blue flower cried helplessly. In the study room, the annoying granny's tone gradually became agitated. She got up from the reclining chair. The true God will not teach the mother to kill the child. The true God will not bear to hurt human relations. If there is such a thing, it is an evil God. An evil God. The God loves the world. I worship the God. If the God harms people, she waved her hand and put away all the books in the study room. Then she walked out. Follow me. The back of this old woman with white hair and even a little hunched had a power to shake people's hearts at this moment. Qing Baji, Qing Jui, and the blue flower, who was still in a state of panic, all followed behind. They walked into the night together. After flying out of the study room, the annoying granny waved her hand. The entire study room instantly burned. It burned fiercely. She ignited the study room and the oldest divine dragon wood in the entire shadowed land. Qing Baji and the others stared blankly at this scene. An entire piece of divine dragon wood brimming with vitality seethed with golden flames, illuminating the entire shadowed land and dispelling the invasion of the night. The night here had never been so bright before. The golden light was dazzling and brilliant. My clansmen! With the blazing golden flames as the background, the white-haired old woman stood in the air and shouted to the entire shadowed land, "Let us ask ourselves, what is our faith?" Life was like this. Things went their separate ways. Outside the forest of hanging skulls, in front of the giant divine dragon wood that had collapsed, the time has come. Guan Yin said calmly. He waved his sleeves and floated up into the sky. The night sky of the forest ocean origin realm was pitch black, but he himself had become light. There was no moon here, and his snow-white monk robes fluttered like the moon. There was indeed no need to bid farewell. Jiang Wang didn't say anything else. He took a step forward and flew over the fallen divine dragon wood like a blue bird. He stepped into the depths of the forest of hanging skulls. The human skulls hanging from the tree appeared clearly in the transcendent's vision. It was cold and deathly still. There was a kind of extreme coldness. When he left last time, he thought that they would have been wiped out. Perhaps flowers and fruits would blossom here, and birds and beasts would enter. However, right after he left the forest ocean origin realm, Yen Shao appeared again. It was as if fate couldn't be changed. He stepped on the clouds and crossed this hell in a few steps. He found the others in the depths of the forest of hanging skulls. The wooden house was just like yesterday, and the bird's nest was still hanging from the roof. Even its position hadn't changed, it was as if it was waiting for someone to return. At this moment, a tailless swallow poked its head out and met Jiang Wang's gaze. There was surprise and anger in its eyes. It probably recognized Jiang Wang. Its wings moved slightly as if it was about to fly out. Whoosh! A cold light pierced through the sky. Jiang Wang's sword slashed and slashed Yan Xiao back into the bird's nest. The sudden dizziness of entering the bird's nest didn't affect Jiang Wang in the slightest. In the suddenly enlarged bird's nest, he moved with his sword and caught up to Yan Xiao in a single step. Jiang Wang already knew that Yan Xiao had 4 theurgies. He raised his left hand and pointed it at the enraged Yan Xiao, who had just regained its senses, and pressed down on the fire world. Bang! A spark exploded the world. Flame sparrows flew, flame flowers bloomed, and flame meteors streaked across the sky. All living things were born, and a resplendent world of fire instantly covered the entire bird's nest. Yan Xiao tried to dodge, but it couldn't escape from this world of fire. It was instantly burned into a flame bird and burned to ashes. Killed in one move. Master Guan Yin said that Yan Zhao's combat strength was below the inner palace's limit, which was a rather generous statement. How was this combat strength at the inner palace's limit? It clearly had 4 theurgies, but they weren't connected at all. It wasn't like the brilliance of a heavenly palace cultivator. It probably relied on the fact that no one in the forest ocean origin realm could truly kill it. Its combat techniques were also very crude, and its combat choices were full of mistakes. At first, it only seemed fierce, and its theurgies were unfathomable. But now, it was nothing more than a chicken or pottery dog. If it was compared to the human race, it probably wouldn't even be able to enter the inner palace's main competition on the river observation platform. Today, Yan Xiao might be stronger and more terrifying than last time, but in front of the current Jiang Wang, it couldn't even unleash its full strength. He directly controlled the fire world to kill it. The process was very easy, but Jiang Wang wasn't surprised. With his current strength, it wasn't strange for him to kill an inner palace opponent no matter how he wanted to. It would be strange if it was difficult to kill them. He had killed all 4 outer palace human devils. Killing an inner palace level Yan Xiao, even if it was an extremely evil bird, was nothing to be afraid of. After all, it hadn't been replenished by the power of hatred under Master Guan Yan's arrangement for a long time. It was only because of the dragon god's divine power that it was still alive. It couldn't display the evil demeanor that had caused Master Guan Yin to return empty-handed. Yan Zhao's corpse was burned to ashes, and it drifted away. Not long after, a strange scene occurred. A pitch-black substance was born in the emptiness. The pitch-black substance formed broken feathers, and the broken feathers gradually became complete and carved. Yan Xiao slowly took shape from head to toe. Its resurrection speed was so fast that it must have reached a critical moment, like what Master Guan Yin said. To resurrect in the fire world, of course, it needed more power. Otherwise, it would turn to ashes before it could take shape. Golden light flowed on Yan Zhao's body, probably the divine power that protected it to survive in the fire world. With the power of the dragon god, it shouldn't be difficult to help Yan Xiao adapt to the fire world. The tailless black swallow with golden light looked very awe-inspiring. Clang! Jiang Wang didn't say anything. His aspect longing suddenly moved forward, swinging left and right, and slashing right. The word human supported heaven and earth, and the fire world became more and more lively. It didn't even have time to scream, let alone say any harsh words. Yan Xiao, who was emitting golden light, had just fully appeared when it was split into 2 halves. It looked like it was still in the process of resurrection, but it was forever stuck at the last step of piecing its body back together. The 2 halves of its body had already fallen. Jiang Wang stepped forward and slowly cut off Yan Zhao's beak, then used the Buzhou wind to shatter it and absorb it. With a light shake of his sword, a translucent flower of sword energy fell, and Yan Zhao's remaining body was fragmented into fine pieces, the more thoroughly it shattered, the more the dragon god's power would be consumed when it resurrected. Master Guan Yin had said that it would be fine as long as Yan Shao was delayed and prevented from wreaking havoc. He had urgently asked Jiang Wang to come to the Forest Ocean Origin Realm only to limit the dragon god's trump card, or even to protect Grandma Little Annoyance. However, Jiang Wang wasn't willing to do so. Master Guan Yin had his greatness, and he, Jiang Wang, also had Jiang Wang's responsibilities. Not only did he want to kill Yan Shao, but he also wanted to kill Yan Shao as quickly as possible. He wanted to kill as quickly as possible. He wanted to kill Yan Shao until it didn't have time to breathe, and it would be best if he could kill Yan Shao until the dragon god's divine power flowed like a river. Before long, Yan Zhao's silhouette had already appeared on the spot once more, gradually taking shape. It still had golden wings to help it resist the might of the fire realm. As soon as it appeared, it flapped its wings and instantly flashed away. This time, it seemed to have obtained even more divine power from the dragon god, and it looked like it was about to break out of the fire realm and even leave the Yan's nest. However, when it appeared again, a long sword just happened to be resting on its neck. Jiang Wang casually pulled, and beheaded it with a single strike. He had fought bitterly in the past and seen all kinds of things Yan Shao was capable of. Today, he had already killed it twice in a row. His knowledge of Yan Shao had long since been sufficient. When dealing with Yan Shao, whose mind wasn't always clear, he definitely wouldn't lose. Even Yan Shao, who had devoured tens of thousands of heads and swallowed much wisdom, had a blank look in its eyes before it died. It couldn't understand at all why it had coincidentally bumped into Jiang Wang's sword when it had decisively shifted space to avoid battle. How could fleeing for its life become a suicide mission? Jiang Wang naturally didn't care about its feelings. He was just repeating what he had to do. The tip of his foot lightly tapped the ground as he approached. Once again, he cut off Yan Zhao's beak and threw it into the Buzhou wind. In the third inner palace, the divine ability seed that had always been cold and desolate was actually somewhat excited. Yan Shao was an extremely evil bird that was nurtured by the dragon god and absorbed the evil thoughts of this world. Yan Zhao's beak naturally had the ability to destroy life. Jiang Wang's Buzhou wind today was because of this. Now that there was such a good opportunity, why couldn't he do it again and again? He was completely using the divine power of the dragon god to continuously strengthen the Buzhou wind. Although after accumulating it many times, the effect would definitely weaken a lot. But for a precious trump card like a divine ability, as long as there was the slightest chance to strengthen it, it would cause people to scramble for it. Not long later, Yan Shao revived once more. This time, the divine light on its body exploded, directly breaking apart the fire realm that enveloped the Yan's nest. It wasn't accurate to say that it broke apart. That golden divine light only flickered for a moment, and the foundation of the fire realm seemed to have been pulled away. The entire fire realm collapsed by itself. In his own fire realm, Jiang Wang could vaguely sense the use of some rules. The power of the dragon god that descended through space slightly stirred up some rules, and thus caused the fire realm to collapse. He still couldn't completely understand the profoundness of it, but he could roughly see the process. It was really a wonderful use. But this was not the most important thing right now. In the rapidly disintegrating resplendent world of fire, the azure cloud mark under his feet flashed and disappeared. Jiang Wang moved along with his sword, once again appearing in front of Yan Shao. Yan Zhao's eyes were still fierce. With a flap of its wings, it had already disappeared. And Jiang Wang directly turned around, drawing a graceful line, a famous person in dire straits, separated by life and death. Behind him were falling flame meteors, under his feet were withering flame flowers, and around him were flame sparrows that scattered like fireworks. That sharp horizontal line split his clean facial features into two halves. Delicate and pretty eyebrows and cold lips. In front of this green-robed swordsman, the tailless swallow with golden light and black feathers was once again divided into two halves. The swallow's body was torn to pieces by the sharp sword light, and the swallow's head was swept up by a wisp of frost wind, dissipating into nothingness. Like cutting wheat and cutting grass. It was like crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. Chapter 1362. The brilliant collapse of the world of fire was the footnote of Yan Zhao's fourth death. When the most evil bird in the world fought with Jiang Wang again, it could not even last one round. It was the same for the first death, the second death, and the third death. Could not resist at all. Divine power kept surging, and Yan Zhao was resurrected from nothingness again. The thoughts of countless people who were devoured often collided in its mind, so it was sometimes clear-headed, sometimes mad, sometimes resentful, and sometimes confused. But from the vicious eyes it stared at Jiang Wang, no matter what state it was in, it would not forget the harm Jiang Wang had done to it. It was full of hatred. It was born out of malice, and its hatred was very naked. That kind of extreme hatred filled his eyes, until it was cut open by a sword. Chang Xiangxi's sword cut open the bird's eyeballs, and of course, it also cut the resentful eyes. The long sword had already passed by, and the sharp sword aura exploded in Yan Zhao's body, cutting it into pieces. This was Yan Zhao's fifth death, and it still did not put up any decent resistance. After the collapse of the world of fire, Jiang Wang did not use this technique again. Because this technique needed both supernatural powers and vital energy, and it consumed a lot. It was fine if it lasted for a long time, but once the world of fire was formed, it would naturally grow and multiply endlessly, and it only needed a little energy to maintain it. But since it had already been destroyed, it was not worth it to reforge it. Using this technique frequently was not good for a long battle. He did not forget his promise to Master Guan Yin. He wanted to kill Yan Zhao until the whole game of chess with God ended. And not just kill Yan Zhao 5 or 6 times. When Yan Zhao was resurrected for the 6th time, it did not even open its eyes, and it directly pounced in front of itself, meeting the sword blade. It showed an extremely terrifying learning ability, and it actually predicted the landing point of Jiang Wang's sword blade. And when the claw landed, Chang Xiangxi paused for a moment. This was one of Yan Zhao's supernatural powers, and it was appropriate to use it now. Unfortunately, Jiang Wang had seen this ability before, and of course, he was not surprised. It could even be said that everything was under his control. With a shake of the long sword, a wisp of frosty white wind swirled out and circled around Yan Zhao. Yan Zhao's vigorous body fell down like fine powder. They were all blown to pieces. In the world's origin sea, Guan Yin gripped the emerald staff and faced the dragon god. In front of the raging sea of golden splendor, it was as majestic as a mountain. You didn't give me this faith. I took it bit by bit. As selfish as you've used them time and time again to destroy their trust. Now, it's not you who's given up on them, it's them who've given up on you. Don't say that everyone is ignorant. The people will make their own choices. Indeed, you don't need to care about the divine path, because you don't understand it at all. How did you come to this world? Guan Yin stepped on the waves and approached the golden dragon step by step. Tell me, where did you come from? Who are you? Of course, the golden divine dragon was majestic and glorious, its divine might as vast as the sea. However, at this moment, Guan Yin was like a cage of divine light, not giving in at all. In the origin sea, in the divine shadowland, in every corner of the forest ocean origin realm, they faced off against each other. Arrogant, ignorant, the dragon god roared, and the entire world's origin sea shook violently. Who do you think you are? You should have been exterminated a long time ago. You stole the deity position while I was distracted, and now you dare to boast? The golden waves boiled rapidly. He was determined to teach the other party a lesson he would never forget. However, at this moment, he felt that his power was rapidly draining away. Yan Zhao's resurrection did not move him at all. The divine power consumed by the resurrection was completely bearable for him. However, this time, Yan Zhao had resurrected, a little too many times. What was the divine level? It was the staircase to God. It was the existence that he relied on to maintain his true connection with the forest ocean origin realm after he killed his way into the origin sea and reached out to the Alioth star. Simply put, now that the divine hilt had been snatched away, his remaining influence on the forest ocean origin realm's deity position had to be completed through Yan Zhao. He could still rely on the forest ocean origin realm and touch the Alioth star. On one hand, he occupied half of the origin sea, and on the other hand, he had Yan Zhao as a bridge. However, at this moment, he quickly replenished his divine power several times and even took the initiative to help Yan Zhao change the battle environment. However, he could not delay Yan Zhao's death at all. Unless he could let go of everything at present, including the control of the origin sea, and personally control Yan Zhao. How was that possible? He could not delay any longer. The battle in the origin sea of the forest ocean origin realm was no longer the focus. The dragon god realized the seriousness of the problem and looked down at Yan Zhao majestically. His long beard split the space, and his dragon head drooped down. "I will kill thee." His voice was like thunder stirring up the angry sea. As the dragon body leaped, its momentum was still there, but it was only empty. Higher up in the sky, there was a lonely, lightless star hanging there. Its outline had already been outlined. It did not seem to exist, but it became clearer and clearer in his perception. It seemed to be just a dark dot, but also like a huge world. In the boundless universe, it was clearly visible. However, in terms of its specific existence, it was so insignificant, until a golden divine dragon flashed, broke through space and time, and suddenly pounced. This divine dragon had antlers like a deer, a head like a cow, eyes like a shrimp, a mouth like a donkey, a belly like a snake, scales like a fish, feet like a phoenix, whiskers like a human, ears like an elephant. Its long whiskers hung down like a treasure tree, and its golden scales glowed with divine light. Its body was thousands of feet long, and it swallowed clouds as it breathed. Behind this dragon, there was an illusory image of emerald that outlined everything. In the gloomy environment, giant beasts ran, and birds danced in the sky. It was a world full of vitality. This was the world illuminated by Yu Heng alone. It floated behind the divine dragon and carried him here. This trip was like a wanderer returning home, and Yu Heng did not resist at all. The golden dragon claw stretched forward, reaching for the black star, and actually sinking into it. Then, the entire dragon body squeezed in, and the golden light of the dragon's scales reflected on the dot. The dot was so close, yet so far. In an instant, the golden divine dragon seemed to be shrinking rapidly. No, it was the lightless dot that was expanding rapidly. It was several times in a breath. Each expansion was tens of thousands of feet. First, it was like a huge rock, then a high mountain, and then a mountain range. Soon, even a mountain range could not be called a mountain range. In the universe, an ancient aura seemed to be awakening. In a trance of billions of years, tens of thousands of worlds were born and destroyed. Even the gigantic golden dragon body seemed small and insignificant. But instead, he laughed wildly. After 1,000 years of sleep, I woke up from a big dream. After surviving all the tribulations, I should have this gain. The huge dragon body landed on the star that was still expanding endlessly. The divine power that roared like a raging sea surged to every corner of this great star. Thus, little by little, the golden brilliance lit up. The flowing light was tens of thousands of feet long, illuminating the endless night sky. It was as if he had lit up this lightless star. In the pitch-black universe, he had become a fire-bearer. He preached to the tens of thousands of worlds and spread the gospel. He lit up the long night and gave the world light. He was high and mighty, and he was boundlessly brilliant. Today, he came here, and all the worlds were blessed. In the vast universe, there seemed to be the voice of a Holy Spirit singing loudly and cheerfully. Those who believe in me will be happy forever. Those who believe in me will be happy forever. If you don't believe in me in this life, all the worlds will be lost. God's grace, God's might, God is here. And suddenly, a huge emerald scepter broke through the air. It was 10,000 feet tall, made of glass, and covered in emerald light. As soon as it descended, it actually pierced through the divine dragon's tail and nailed it to the void. The infinitely expanding star was right in front of it, but the golden light could no longer continue to spread. As the lightless star rapidly expanded, the proportion of the golden light occupying it became narrower and narrower. If the golden light had already illuminated nearly half of the star like a torch, after being obstructed by this, it was less than 20%, and it was still decreasing rapidly. Roar! The bright golden divine dragon roared, "Who? How dare you stop me from achieving the Tao? Who? You don't know what's good for you." With a swing of the dragon's tail, the 10,000-foot-tall scepter began to shake. At the top of the tall scepter, a handsome monk in white appeared. He stepped on the scepter and immediately froze it, but his voice was gentle. "Don't you know me, or don't you know your divine hilt? I'm the dragon god of the myriad realms. A mere forest sea divine hilt." The dragon god's body shone with golden radiance, and his golden scales were like a wash. He suddenly leaned back, and his huge body coiled around the scepter as he lunged at Guan Yin. "You're a mantis trying to stop a chariot. I'll destroy your soul." Compared to the dragon god's violent and manic behavior, Guan Yin was unusually calm. His white monk robes fluttered slightly in the air, and his jade-like face glowed with divine light. He pressed his palms together and said, "It's better to sleep forever than to wake up from a dream." In the void behind him, faces began to appear one after another. They were of all shapes and sizes, and they were all real. The white-haired one with deep wrinkles was the priest, Little Annoyance. The one with 8 braids that looked wild and natural was Qing Baoji. The one who drew the bowstring and was calm and sharp was Qing Jui. The one whose hands were bound, but whose eyes were filled with tears of remorse was Qing Hua. The small one who put her palms together in a serious manner was Qing Guer, the warrior with a bow and saber, the woman who harvested fruits to make armor. Those who had survived the calamity of the forest ocean origin realm were still alive. They prayed together. They prayed with such devotion. I believe in the years of peace. I believe in a peaceful life. The people of the forest sea make a sincere wish. I don't ask for the tribe to be invincible. I ask for peaceful coexistence, and there's no need to fight to the death. I ask for peace everywhere, and no one will have to worry about their heads being cut off. I ask for a bonfire in the night, and I can sing to my heart's content. I ask for a clear sky, and a good night's sleep. I ask for no evil owls to be resurrected, and for the night to be free of misfortune. I ask for no warrior to sacrifice his head, and for all my loved ones to be free and healthy. Countless specks of faith surged into the heavens and filled the air. In the forest of hanging skulls, Jiang Wang killed Yen Shao, who had fled to the edge of the swallow's nest, with a swing of his sword. Specks of light filled the skies. Who said there were no stars at night in the forest sea origin realm? In the void of the universe, the light of faith gathered behind Guan Yan's head like a Buddha's light. Today, he was a Buddha. If the people of the world have such a wish. Guan Yin muttered softly, I will do my best. The huge jade-green scepter beneath his feet suddenly burst forth. Jade-green branches and lush green leaves quickly grew into a towering tree in this boundless universe. The branches swayed for thousands of kilometers. It was so tall that one couldn't see the end of it. If one looked at it vaguely, one would see the face of a devout believer on every leaf. Under this incomparably tall tree, the awe-inspiring golden divine dragon was like an earthworm that had been nailed to the ground and was struggling in pain. It was ugly and weak. It rolled in the universe, trying to shake itself off, but it couldn't break free. Yen Shao was born from the evil thoughts of human nature. Putting aside good and evil, it was actually an extremely talented life form. In the past, because the Forest Sea Sacred Tribe had been slaughtered into submission, and the other tribes were almost wiped out by the Forest Sea Sacred Tribe, it rarely encountered a true opponent. The dragon god emissaries, that occasionally descended upon the Forest Sea Origin Realm, were usually at the Soaring Dragon Realm or the Inner Palace Realm. They were limited to the 7-star pavilion's secret realms, so they wouldn't be too powerful. Therefore, although it had killed a lot, it didn't have many high-quality battles. Its combat skills could be considered crude in Jiang Wang's eyes. However, this was quickly remedied in its battle with Jiang Wang. Who was Jiang Wang? With a legendary battle record that surpassed the Elder of Heaven's mansion, he became the #1 Inner Palace cultivator in history. In terms of combat talent, there was no doubt that he was the best. His combat skills had completely formed his own style, and he was one of the best. With such an opponent as a sparring partner, Yen Zhao's combat skills could be said to have improved by leaps and bounds. From being killed as soon as it appeared, to being able to block a few attacks, and then successfully escaping from the swallow's nest, its improvement was visible to the naked eye. Although it still died under Jiang Wang's sword in the end, it was enough to show how difficult it was to deal with. Hee. Yen Shao, who had revived in front of the wooden house again, laughed cruelly. Soon you won't be able to stop me. Soon, whoosh. Cold light flashed like lightning. The swallow's head flew into the sky. Did I allow you to speak? Jiang Wang said coldly. He skillfully cut off Yen Zhao's beak and dismembered its body. This small wooden house was located in the center of the forest of hanging skulls. It was peaceful inside the wooden house, and outside the wooden house were skulls that Yen Shao had eaten clean. And it was in front of such a small wooden house that Jiang Wang and Yen Shao repeated the process of killing and being killed. Again and again, as the divine power was transmitted, the revived Yen Shao rose and pounced forward with its claws. At the same time, it raised its left wing, cold light flashed, and the sword light was like a fish leaping into the air, sweeping past its claws and directly cutting off its left wing. This Yen Zhao's ability was not ordinary. Its beak could kill with a peck, it could move with a flap of its right wing, and it could temporarily attack with a drop of its right claw. When they first met, its left wing had already been cut off by an unknown messenger of the dragon deity, so it could not see the fourth magical power. Jiang Wang also did not want to see it. Wherever it moved, it would be cut. At this level, Yen Shao was not qualified to show more of its strength. The person was like a startled swan, and the sword was like flowing light. After a few rounds of flowing light, Yen Shao was shaved bald, leaving only its head. As if it did not feel pain, it shouted as if it was hypnotizing itself. You can't stop me, you will die sooner or later. I have been getting stronger. I have been getting stronger. The long sword pierced through its neck. Jiang Wang said indifferently, You have changed, but you have not become stronger. This was a complete and utter slaughter. Yen Shao, who had been revived once again, seemed to have fallen into chaos. When it opened its mouth, there were hundreds of voices talking at the same time. You dare to trample on my efforts. I have worked so hard to reach this stage. Cold-blooded spectator. Kill him quickly, kill him quickly. I want to eat him. What right do you have to say that I have not become stronger? I'll just eat him, I'll become stronger after eating him. Contradictions, chaos, and noise. It was as if there were hundreds and thousands of souls imprisoned in the same dirty bag, struggling to get out. Jiang Wang heard the noise, and his left eye turned red in an instant. As soon as he entered the array formation, he encountered countless weak souls in his divine soul state. Those souls that had merged into one with Yan Shao were either crying or laughing. Shaoxi's sword spirit manifested, and slashed horizontally. Suddenly, countless noises shattered. It cut through thousands of soldiers like rolling up a mat. Yan Zhao's body suddenly stiffened, and it fell down upside down, its beak hitting the ground like a nail. Bang! Jiang Wang stepped on it. It was nailed in. Chapter 1363. Yan Zhao's chaotic mind could no longer remember how many times it had died. This was the 60th time, the 160th time? It had experienced too many ways of dying. But as evil and chaotic as it was, of course, it would not be outdone. It rose again and again, revived again and again, fought again and again, but also lost again and again. Its opponent was like a towering mountain, but also like a vast sea. No matter how it chose to charge, it could not shake the mountain and sea. After absorbing divine power again and reviving from nothingness, Yan Shao said in a ferocious voice, "He. How long can you maintain this intense battle state?" When it said this, Jiang Wang was already close to it, and his left hand was on its head. With just a light press, a killing nail was pressed down and nailed into its skull. He asked casually, "How long can the one behind you last?" The wind blew the wreckage away like smoke. In the surging divine power, Yan Shao condensed and took shape again. Jiang Wang was already very familiar with this kind of divine power, and even more familiar with the process of Yan Zhao's revival. He took a step forward and cut Yan Zhao's offensive posture with 2 clean slashes. With a wave of his left hand, the true Samadhi fire formed a ring of fire. It wrapped around Yan Zhao's neck, the roots of its wings, and its claws. Although it did not touch Yan Shao, it could not move at all, and could only maintain a motionless posture in the air. It had long remembered the power of the true Samadhi fire and knew that if it moved a little, it would be burned to ashes if it touched the fire of this divine power. It seemed that it was like 5 rings of fire were hanging it in the air. "Do you think you can last longer in this posture, or the dragon god can last longer?" Jiang Wang asked. "He," Yan Shao said with a smile, "I don't think you can last much longer." "Is that so?" Jiang Wang closed his fingers, and the ring of fire formed by the true Samadhi fire suddenly tightened, burning Yan Shao to ashes in an instant. In the swirling ashes, there was a brief moment of peace in the forest of hanging skulls. Yan Zhao's figure slowly condensed again. His eyes were filled with resentment as he looked over. It hissed, "Do you think that monk can really defeat the dragon god? It's just a mantis trying to stop a chariot, an ant trying to shake a tree. When he dies, it will be you." Sauvignon Blanc sliced it into 2 halves from the bottom to the top. In the cold night, Chang Feng was still as clear and bright as the autumn water. It was truly a treasure sword, killing enemies without staining them with blood. Jiang Wang gently shook his long sword. While Chang Xiangxi was humming softly, he checked his understanding of swordsmanship and analyzed his killing of Yan Shao again. Yan Shao was not a very good target for practicing swordsmanship, but it was a very good target for practicing swordsmanship. Meng Qi could release his swordsmanship inspiration to his heart's content, and the opportunities to sum up his experience were almost unlimited. "Damn you! Damn it! Don't give me the chance, I will definitely torture you!" Yan Shao, who had just been revived, clamored again. Jiang Wang only asked softly, "Speaking of which, do you know anything about the dragon god?" While he was talking, he was already close to Yan Shao. Chang Xiangxi swiftly and fiercely pierced through his heart, piercing a huge hole in Yan Zhao's chest and abdomen, so that he could see the other side from this end. It was the sword of the old general past his prime. "You don't have to answer yet. Wait until next time," he said. Jiang Wang had never been able to figure out what that black substance was. He could only guess that it was probably something like the gathering of evil thoughts. In short, Yan Shao was revived again in the condensation of this black substance. I don't know anything, puff. It was once again cut into a swallow's rod, standing in the night sky. Think carefully before you speak, Jiang Wang said. So he held his long sword horizontally and beheaded Yan Shao again. Seeing the swallow's head flying high, and seeing the ruthlessness in its eyes dissipate again, it was very simple. Yan Shao had a misunderstanding. It thought that it had escaped from the swallow's nest, which meant that its fighting skills were rapidly approaching Jiang Wang's. But it didn't know that Jiang Wang had been adapting to the new tactics, how to balance the two goals of shortest consumption and killing Yan Shao as soon as possible. There was no difficulty in killing Yan Shao. Taking care of two difficult goals at the same time was the challenge that Jiang Wang gave himself. That gave Yan Shao a chance to escape from the swallow's nest. In fact, without the support of the swallow's nest, it had nowhere to go under Jiang Wang's sword and was unable to parry. Especially as the battles happened again and again, its knowledge was constantly replenished. It had almost no secrets in Jiang Wang's eyes. It could be said that as soon as it moved, its choice of fighting had already appeared in Jiang Wang's mind. What he wanted to do was just to harvest it conveniently. Master Guan Yan's worry was not unreasonable. Yan Shao revived again and again, and improved again and again. Indeed, it was easy for people to feel despair. Opponents who were stronger than it were also easy for it to exhaust them to death. But Jiang Wang was also rapidly improving. This improvement was reflected in his proficiency in killing Yan Shao. Because of the quick satisfaction of knowledge, it seemed that Jiang Wang was killing more and more easily. Of course, if time could go on like this, Yan Zhao's improvement would catch up with Jiang Wang sooner or later. But it couldn't be done overnight. In fact, Jiang Wang's exhaustion would happen before that, and Jiang Wang decisively changed his strategy and reduced his consumption in order to delay that moment. I will also understand you very well. Yan Shao, who had revived once again, said fiercely. This was obviously a threat, but it was very low level. I feel that I need to leave behind a secret manual for the Forest Ocean Origin Realm. Jiang Wang reached out and grabbed Yan Zhao's neck with one hand. The killing nail directly pierced through its neck and into its body. 1,000 ways to die of Yan Shao. What do you think? He wanted to kill Yan Shao 1,000 times. Yan Shao, who had revived once again, still had the same body as before. It was still in perfect condition, but its eyes had changed. That complicated, ruthless, and chaotic gaze had already been on the verge of dissipating when it was still alive. No. It had always been the only one who brought fear to its enemies. It could not feel fear. How could it feel fear? Last time, when it fought this person in front of it, it had felt fear because it thought that it would really die. It thought that when it could not borrow the power of the Forest Ocean Origin Realm to revive and needed divine power to revive, the Dragon God would see it as a burden and erase it. But the Dragon God did not. The Dragon God still needed it very much. He needed it to destroy the Forest Ocean Origin Realm. He needed it to restrain the realm's consciousness. He needed it to restrain that Baldi. Now that it was connected to the Dragon God as a divine rank, it was even less of an existence that could be easily abandoned. As long as the Dragon God was here, it could revive endlessly, and this process was not something that the Dragon God could stop. So what did it have to fear? But even though it thought this way, I don't know much, it said. It seemed that it could not control its mouth at all. It encouraged itself in its heart and surrendered to its opponent verbally. There were tens of thousands of chaotic consciousnesses in its mind. Countless thoughts were colliding with each other at every moment. But at this moment, when it had already died who knew how many times, the tens of thousands of chaotic consciousnesses all transmitted the same fear. Even an immortal existence would not be able to withstand hundreds of thousands of death. Its will to resist was shattered into pieces after death. It was already admitting defeat, but what answered it was still a sword. This sword pierced through its head. It was so fierce that it did not deviate at all. Just get to the point. Cut the crap, Jiang Wang said indifferently. Death, death again. Yan Shao had witnessed death thousands of times, and had also created death thousands of times. It had also died before. But usually it would die at most 5 times before the other party collapsed. It had never died so many times in such a short period of time. After fighting for so long, the hand of the person in front of it had not trembled once. It was so much so that it was a little dazed, not knowing who was the existence that could always maintain a perfect state. When it absorbed the divine power to revive again, "He is a true dragon," it immediately said. It guaranteed that what it said was a big secret, but what responded to it was a ball of raging fire that pounced on its face. The information is outdated. The cold voice said so. The body was ashes, the soul was smoke. The true Samadhi fire burned everything. What else do I know? Hurry up! What else do I know? The body was still in the process of reconstruction, and the voices in its mind were already arguing. The moment Yan Shao opened its eyes, it screamed. When he came to this world, he was in a very bad state. He slept here for many years before waking up. I know where he slept at that time. Jiang Wang frowned. This is indeed new information, but it doesn't seem to be very important. Why do I want to know where he slept? The value of this information is too low. How about this? I'll let you live for 3 more breaths. So he began to count. 3, 2, 1. Wait, I thought of something else. Yan Shao shouted. Poof! The long sword was slowly pulled out from Yan Zhao's heart. Jiang Wang shook his head. This time, you only have 3 breaths of time. You said it, you can't go back on your word. Next time, behave better. The divine power descended, and the black substance was born from nothing. Yan Shao, whose thoughts were in a mess, could not remember clearly, but Jiang Wang remembered it clearly. This was Yan Zhao's 371st resurrection. After Yan Zhao's beak was absorbed by the Buzhou wind, it did not feel any change. It had probably reached a kind of limit, but adhering to the principle of not wasting, Jiang Wang still cut it off and swallowed it with the Buzhou wind. The 371st resurrection of Yan Zhao's first action was no longer to escape or attack, but to open its mouth and shout, "I know where they are fighting, I know where the Alioth star is anchored at this time, I can sense it." Jiang Wang looked at it quietly. In its increasingly difficult to suppress fear, he grinned. Good news. This smile was an unforgettable comfort for Yan Shao. And Jiang Wang raised his left index finger and gently drew down in the air. A line of crimson flames burned vertically in the air. It was fantastic, bright, and slowly shortened at a constant speed. It's worth 30 breaths of time. In this 30 breaths of time, you can rest or attack me. Except that you can't escape, I won't kill you no matter what you do. Jiang Wang said, "This is your reward." He did not say what would happen after 30 breaths, because there was no need to say it. Yan Shao glanced at the red line of flame and could not help but become nervous. Let me think, stupid brain, what do you know? Stop arguing. It's related to the dragon god, quickly think. The state of chaos once again took the upper hand, but they were only arguing about the dragon god. Jiang Wang even promised to allow it to try to attack in this 30 breaths of time. However, as fierce as it was, it seemed to have forgotten this choice. In a long time, Yan Shao used resurrection time and time again to tame the Forest Ocean Sacred Clan, making it a habit to sacrifice its head. And Jiang Wang used hundreds of fancy killings to tame Yan Shao. After all, 1,000 ways to die of Yan Shao. To others, it might sound like a novelty, but to it was really a little horrifying. Seeing that the line of flame was gradually burning out, Yan Shao gritted its teeth and said, "The dragon god hid a treasure in the crack of the world, I know the exact location." Jiang Wang responded faintly. Yan Shao was stunned, not quite able to understand Jiang Wang's reaction, but still continued, "As long as you let me go, I can take you there." Jiang Wang glanced at the line of flame that had burned until there were only a few sparks left, and said faintly, "Time's up." Pointing his index finger at the sparks, he casually made a stroke, and the sparks shot out, suddenly spreading out into a fire net. The raging fire net of the true Samadhi fire covered Yan Shao. "You can make up any news, I'll judge the truth myself," he said. Yan Shao was burned to a crisp in the fire net. What kind of pain was death? One thing was certain, most people in this world could not bear it. Yan Shao could bear it, and had endured it many times. But when the number of times increased to hundreds in a very short period of time, its ability to bear it was also broken. As soon as it came back to life this time, it shouted angrily, "I'm telling the truth." Jiang Wang looked at it calmly. "My judgment may not be right, but I definitely believe in myself, so when you express yourself, you'd better find a way to make me believe you. What I said may be a little awkward, I hope you can understand." "What if I can't understand?" Yan Shao asked bitterly. What answered it was a straight sword, "Then you'll understand a few more times." The cold light stretched out, and the Yan Zhao's corpse was separated. Jiang Wang's coldness at this time was something Yan Shao would never forget for the rest of his life. Yan Shao, who came back to life again, almost broke down and howled in despair, "Either you find a way to kill me completely, or don't do it if you don't have the ability. I don't want to come back to life. I don't want to think anymore." Yan Zhao's mind was not complete, and it was purely relying on the accumulation of the skull to increase its wisdom. At this moment, after its defense line was broken again and again, it was extremely fragile and suffering. However, Jiang Wang did not have the slightest bit of mercy. He frowned, raised his sword, and killed it again. "You're so noisy." When life and death became a kind of reincarnation that could not be escaped, and it started and ended quickly, the pain was indescribable with words. Yan Shao, who came back to life, screamed, "He seems to have always had an enemy, not that monk, but before that monk. The reason why he needs to sleep here is because of that enemy." "Who is his enemy?" Jiang Wang asked. Yan Shao met his gaze and subconsciously shrank back. "I don't know." Jiang Wang raised his hand. Yan Shao suddenly closed its eyes, and actually burst into tears. It cried with grievance, and cried until it was out of breath. Why are you doing this to me? I've never eaten you." "Shut up," Jiang Wang said. Yan Shao immediately shut its mouth. In the void, two black chains drilled out, one wrapped around Yan Zhao's neck, and the other wrapped around its right claw. Because the study of the secret arts of legalism was not deep, the imprisonment chains were rarely used now, but in a situation where the enemy was completely controlled, its effect was still unquestionable. "Take me to the place where he used to sleep," Jiang Wang said. If Yan Shao still had a bit of temper, it would definitely question Jiang Wang. "Didn't you say that this information was worthless and only worth 3 breaths? But it obviously did not have a temper. It only said timidly, "Oh, okay." It obediently flew in front to lead the way. Chapter 1364. Where was the end of the forest ocean origin? He didn't know if the people of the past knew, but those born after the Dark Age definitely didn't know. Ever since the night invasion, every night had become synonymous with calamity. The divine Shadowland was the only safe place, and the range of activity was limited by time. It was only a single day. The lives of countless people in the forest ocean origin were confined to a single day. It didn't matter if you were a hero or a beautiful woman. Even the strongest sacred race warrior had to return home before nightfall. The divine dragon incense could resist the night invasion. but to light up the divine dragon incense just to explore the end of the forest ocean origin? That was too extravagant and too risky. The 7 trees of the Azure End had always wanted to see the end of the world. His last wish before he died was for the blue flower to go see it. And his own life probably hadn't gone as far as Jiang Wang. It was already a long journey from the divine Shadowland to the Hanging Skull Forest. Not to mention that Jiang Wang had already been flying for a long time. The inky darkness of the night naturally didn't affect his extraordinary vision. Especially after cultivating the eye of Qianyang, not to mention Li Longquan's discerning eyes, even normal clues couldn't escape his eyes. Yan Shao flew in front, the chains on its body rattling in the night sky. Jiang Wang controlled the chains and stepped on the clouds, drifting into the distance. It was effortless and elegant, it was like taking a walk in the night with his pet. Of course, this night was starless and moonless, so it lacked some romance. It had already been a while since the light of faith flew into the sky. I wonder how Master Guanyin is doing. In order to exhaust your dragon god's divine power and support Senior Guanyin, Jiang Wang said, I'll kill you once every 30 breaths of time. Can you understand? Yan Shao naturally couldn't understand. But it didn't matter whether it understood or not. Sword light flashed through the sky, and Yan Shao wailed. The revived Yan Shao obediently waited for the chains to bind its body before it flew forward with all its might. Its speed was astonishing. It pulled the shackles taut, and Jiang Wang's green robe fluttered in the wind. Yan Shao didn't know how long this situation would last, but Jiang Wang said that if it could fly faster, the time needed to kill it could be delayed. It was already flying forward with all its might, and it had successfully allowed Jiang Wang to extend its survival time by 10 breaths. From the very beginning, he had died as soon as he came back to life. Now, he could still die after 40 breaths. This huge improvement made it very motivated, and it even wanted to work harder. It had completely forgotten that at the very beginning, it only wanted to bring more pain to Jiang Wang. The man and Yan Shao were flying swiftly above the pitch-black forest sea. From time to time, there would be a few miserable screams that would liven things up. This scene could be described as horrifying. Fortunately, thanks to Yan Zhao's hard work, it didn't take long for them to see a place that was different from the rest of the forest. She looked like a beauty with green hair who was bald. As they flew closer, they could see clearly that the boundless forest sea had been cut off here. This was a huge canyon that twisted and turned. It was difficult to see the end no matter how they looked. It was easy to associate it with the soul-breaking gorge of the modern realm, but it also gave off a completely different feeling. Jiang Wang looked left and right. No matter how he looked, he felt that this was the mark left behind by a dragon that had smashed through the ground. Did he smash down on his own, or was he beaten down by his enemies? Jiang Wang asked directly. I don't know about that. When I was born, he had already been awake for a long time, Yan Shao answered honestly. He used to sleep here? Did he sleep where he fell down? Jiang Wang asked again. No, this is only the place where he first descended. Yan Shao led the way. They flew past the huge canyon and continued forward. It didn't make sense. Such a huge dragon smashing down would definitely cause quite a commotion. If the dragon god had just fallen into a deep sleep, he might have been skinned alive by the people of the forest sea origin realm. Their journey with Yan Shao continued. They killed Yan Shao about 7 more times before they reached their final destination. It was an incomparably huge divine dragon tree. It wasn't very tall. In the forest sea origin realm, the height of its crown could only be considered a slightly taller wave in the forest sea. However, it was extremely thick and was almost the size of a house. There was no other tree within a radius of 50 kilometers. There were many broken sacrificial tools around the giant tree. There were also mysterious items tied to the tree, such as divine rune banners and divine tablet. Unfortunately, the writing on them had already been eroded by time. Even if there were, Jiang Wang would have a hard time recognizing them. After all, he wasn't a disciple of the thieving Heaven Hall like Su Qian. The most eye-catching thing about this giant tree was that it was hollow inside. The entrance to the tree hole was arched like a door. Yan Shao introduced, in the beginning, this tree was very small, and the tree hole was also very small. It was about the size of your fist. The dragon god hides inside and hibernates for many years. Jiang Wang suddenly recalled an ancient text he had flipped through while he was in the Mu Empire's grasslands. There was a description of a dragon in it. A dragon can be big or small, and it can rise or hide. When big, it can rise and spit out fog. When small, it can hide. When it rises, it can soar through the universe. When it hides, it can hide within the waves. Who would have thought that the terrifying existence that had almost taken control of the entire forest sea origin realm and almost devoured the world's consciousness would once hide in a fist-sized tree hole like a worm? Yan Shao continued. His blood flowed out and was absorbed by the tree. His life aura also affected the tree. As a result, the tree grew larger and larger, and its branches and leaves all had miraculous uses. Gradually, it was worshipped by people. I think that's how he slowly became the dragon god. Your analysis is very logical. Jiang Wang nodded in approval. This acknowledgement made Yan Shao jump for joy. When I was bored, I would fly around, and he wouldn't care about me. That's why I've been to many places. It said, there used to be many people here, and they would often worship here. Later on, there were no more. This was the place where the earliest belief in the dragon god originated. If the dragon god had embarked on the path of a righteous god and seriously developed believers, then its importance would probably be similar to that of the Mu Empire's Cheong Lu Mountain. But now, it seemed that it had been abandoned for many years. You were catalyzed by the dragon god later on. How did you know that this divine dragon tree was just an ordinary tree in the past? Jiang Wang asked. I heard it from someone. It was a very old man, Yan Shao said seriously. Yan Shao said seriously. It did not dare to not take Jiang Wang's question seriously. He was still here when I flew over. When I spoke to him, he wasn't afraid at all. He was very happy to talk to me. He said that he was a priest here, and that he had read many historical records and memorized them all. What happened to him later on? Jiang Wang asked. I ate him, Yan Shao said matter-of-factly. Jiang Wang didn't say anything. He only said, let's go in and take a look. The shackles shook slightly, and Yan Shao obediently walked in front. It flew into this tree hole that could be called the dragon god's original divine temple. In the vast universe, the towering glazed tree's branches stretched across the void. It had thousands of leaves that froze the golden dragon in place. This was the Forest Ocean Origin World's World Divine Tree. With the Forest Ocean Origin World's true god's staff as its backbone, it was supported by the Forest Ocean Origin World's will and prayed to all living beings in the Forest Ocean Origin World. It could almost represent the entire Forest Ocean Origin World, and it represented everything that the dragon god had ravaged and persecuted. Buddhists often talked about the cycle of karma, and this was retribution. From the part where the world divine tree impaled the dragon's tail, its roots continuously extended like spiritual snakes and vines. They crawled up the dragon's body and wrapped around it tighter and tighter. They were like jade-colored blood vessels, but also like spiritual tree patterns. It had once invaded and plundered everything in the Forest Ocean Origin World. Now, the World Divine Tree, which represented the Forest Ocean Origin World's will, was invading the dragon's body. In the depths of the empty universe, such a scene played out. The dazzling golden dragon bared its fangs and brandished its claws as it roared and soared through the universe. The jade-colored glazed tree was firmly nailed to the dragon's tail. Its roots used the tail as the starting point as they climbed towards the dragon's head. A graceful monk in a white monk robe stood firmly on top of the jade-colored crown. His gaze was calm and compassionate. If one ignored the sounds of pain, this scene was simply unbelievably beautiful. It was like a sculpture of a jade-green tree with a golden dragon coiled around it. It was as if every detail had been meticulously polished by a craftsman. Rather than saying that it was the result of a coincidental collision, it was more like the work of nature's uncanny workmanship. Otherwise, how could it be so exquisite? Not far away, the Alioth star was still rapidly expanding. It was very difficult to describe the shape of the universe's stars because it was constantly changing. Sometimes it was a bumpy sphere, sometimes it was square, sometimes it was like the lid of a pot. The only thing that didn't change was its expansion. How large was it going to expand to? How large was it going to expand to? Perhaps this unlimited expansion was a choice to avoid being taken over by an external will. The dragon god struggled under the suppression of the forest ocean origin world's world divine tree. It roared like thunder and this thunderous roar signaled the intensification of the battle. The dragon god was fighting with the world divine tree. Ripples appeared in the void. The formless sound wave took on a corporeal form as it rippled in the void. The faint ripples quickly gathered around Guan Yin, who was standing on top of the world divine tree. It looked as gentle as flowing water, but it gave off the feeling that a giant, formless mouth had suddenly opened and was about to devour everything. It wasn't just a feeling, though. The dragon roar soundwave possessed the power to annihilate energy. It was a famous technique during the dragon race's era of dominance. However, Guan Yin didn't move at all. He only opened his mouth and said, "You are born with great power, which is why you look down on the common people. You must know that the will of an ant cannot be changed." Countless voices rang out in the void at the same time. "Good!" With one voice, 10,000 voices responded. The ripples in the void stopped and actually calmed down. The dragon god was naturally unwilling to accept that his dragon roar soundwave had been broken so easily. He struggled against the world divine tree's invasion while shaking his dragon body. On the dragon body that was thousands of feet long and stretched like a mountain range, a piece of golden scale flew into the air. It was as big as a square table, and the surface of the scale was as smooth as a mirror, vaguely reflecting one's face. The edge of the scale was as sharp as a knife, and cold light flowed back and forth. It cut through the void as if it had come to end fate. It followed the boundary of the Tao and reached the top of the green tree in a flash. If the dragon god used a knife, he would definitely be a top knife user. Just this one move had the intent to destroy the heavens and the world. However, Guan Yin was still calm. He only glanced at it lightly, and a light spot of faith jumped out behind him. The process of the light spot expanding was like a seed growing into a bud, and then a flower blooming. It formed a light shadow of a warrior holding a long spear, and directly swooped down from the top and stabbed. The tip of the spear hit the golden scale and firmly nailed it. Then, it pierced into the depths of the vast universe. The thousands of golden scales didn't need to be sent out again. Naturally, there were thousands of light spots waiting for it. The dragon god's left beard swayed like a brilliant long whip, and he swung it in the void. Crack! A crack rapidly extended. Cracks could actually appear in the void. Under this attack, the void was like a spider web. The terrifying crack enveloped and was about to fall on the world god tree. Guan Yin glanced again. A leaf fell from the tree. The leaf had left the branch, and its brilliance had changed. It instantly turned into an emerald green divine scroll, suppressing above the crack in the void. Then, the crack rapidly closed. The dragon god's right beard suddenly pierced down at this moment and pierced into the void. When it appeared, it was right above Guan Yin's head. The tip of the beard was like the tip of a spear, and it pierced down just like that. At this moment, Guan Yin was still in the posture of putting his palms together. At this moment, His left hand was sticking to his right palm and rising, directly raised high. His left hand was straight. At this moment, the sharpness was revealed, and the void as far as the eye could see seemed to be illuminated by a blade light for an instant. With just a simple upward thrust of the palm, the descending dragon beard spear was cut open from the middle, and the blade energy continued to attack. The dragon god had no choice but to retract his right beard and look up at Guan Yin angrily. Golden light exploded in his eyes. At this moment it was silent and majestic. The divine might was like a prison. The dragon might was like the sea. At this moment, in the void, nothing could be seen. But in the eyes of experts with sufficient strength, at this moment, it was already a surging sea of spiritual power. Violent spiritual power, like blades, spears, and halberds, rushed from all directions. But Guan Yin did not move. He stood alone at the top of the World God Tree, helping the World God Tree pin the Dragon God, his white lunar monk robe fluttering like a wine banner, and his joined palms hung down, each of his 5 fingers blossoming like flowers. When the spiritual blade came, it would shatter with a flick of the finger. When the spiritual spear came, it would shatter with a flick of the finger. When the spiritual halberd came, it would shatter with a flick of the finger. It was the minor formless flower pinching sword finger that Zhao Ruqing had used on the Riverview platform. But Zhao Ruqing used sword energy. The minor formless flower pinching sword finger was a finger sword technique that used Dao essence to activate sword energy. At this moment, when Guan Yin used it, it actually broke the boundary between Dao essence power and spiritual power, directly breaking the spiritual killing technique. And it was a spiritual killing technique used by an existence like the Dragon God. It was so terrifying. In the void, one tree after another bloomed. The spiritual killing formation was like a raging sea, but in a vast ocean, Guan Yin formed an independent island, a lone tree forming a forest. Wind and rain could not enter, and wild waves could not invade. The battlefield did not stop here, and the Dragon God would not be at his wits' end. He glared at Guan Yin, extending the battlefield. In the forest ocean origin world's origin sea. The golden dragon's vertical eyes were cold, even colder than the eyes in the void. The golden ocean that occupied half of the space suddenly surged with raging waves. In the entire origin sea, this half of the ocean surface was obviously higher than a mountain. It was like a fierce tiger sitting on a mountain, looking down from above. Once it swooped down, it would instantly sweep away everything. The Dragon God used his true dragon body to fight for the Alioth star and used his true dragon primordial spirit to guard the origin sea, possessing unimaginable power. After suffering a powerful obstruction here at the Alioth star, he immediately turned to the forest ocean origin world's origin sea. No matter how strong Guan Yin was, his cultivation time was limited. Since he had invested so much power in the Alioth star, the origin sea must be empty. The Dragon God had always felt that he was bluffing in the origin sea, but now he realized that the other party might be bluffing even more. Thus, he did not hesitate to start a decisive battle in the origin sea. If he could completely occupy the origin sea, he would also cut off the foundation of the World Divine Tree, which was a good move to remove the firewood from under the cauldron. Guan Yin derived the Tao of true spirit from cultivation. This was the only Tao in the world, and no one had succeeded before. It was not just that no one had succeeded. There was almost no one who could survive with just a little bit of true spirit. Back then, he had formed a Tao embryo in his true spirit and used the terrifying power of mind reading to retain his memories. Although it was a genius move, it was also a risk. At the same time, this also meant that no one in this world truly understood Guan Yin's strength, fighting style, and style. Because this was the first time since the creation of the world. The Dragon God was lucky to have met him for the first time. It was the first time he saw the real Guan Yin, and Guan Yin had been watching him for 500 years. The split spirit left in the origin sea was indeed no match for the true dragon primordial spirit, especially when the other party was staking everything to completely overturn the origin sea. His cooperation with the forest ocean origin world's world will made it very difficult to resist. Thus, Guan Yin raised his palm and bowed lightly to the forest ocean origin world's world will. Please leave it to me. There was no impassioned speech or stirring speech. It was just a few simple words. The world will's world will suddenly flew up and directly flew in front of Guan Yin. Jade light swirled and turned into a wooden fish. This was a complete surrender of control and handing over the entire world to Guan Yin as the world will's guardian. This is impossible. The dragon god was shocked and furious. When did you control the world will? In his long life, he had never seen a world will trust a living being so much. Protecting a world was the world will's instinct, and the scene before him undoubtedly showed that the forest ocean origin world's world will ignored the existence of this instinct. Other than being controlled and controlled, there should be no other possibility. Although your life is long, you only know how to control and use things. You have never trusted them, Guan Yin said. This is your sorrow. Perhaps the world will did not have the thoughts of an intelligent being, but it was the clearest about everything that had happened in the forest ocean origin world over the past 500 years. 500 years of unrepentant sacrifice had led to this level of trust. Currently, the forest ocean origin world's world will was floating in front of Guan Yin, taking the form of a wooden fish. The wooden fish had no mallet. Guan Yin bent his finger and lightly tapped it. Thump! The jade and clear seas instantly merged into one, going from being completely distinct to being completely indistinguishable. The light blue waves suddenly soared and collided with the raging golden sea. Rumble! They were evenly matched. Within the origin sea, the towering waves were like two giant beasts tearing at each other. In the depths of the universe, beside the infinitely expanding Alioth star, the dragon god seemed to have heard something hilarious. I didn't know that such a treacherous human could have the word trust. Little bald donkey, you're not done yet. Today, I'll teach you a lesson. He was just about to make a move when Guan Yin flicked his finger. A wisp of wind whistled out, instantly roaring like a tornado. It broke through the sea of souls and charged forward. The dragon god's golden eyes turned and swept up the sea of souls that covered Guan Yin's body. At the same time, it also annihilated this wisp of wind. In his golden vertical pupils, an illusion of a house flashed past. Within the forest ocean origin world, roars suddenly sounded from the cold forest of hanging skulls. The small trees with white skulls hanging from them rose from the ground one by one. Their roots were their legs, and their branches were their arms. Wooden thorns grew everywhere. They transformed into skinny treants with human skulls on their heads. Each of them looked sinister and grotesque as they leaped out at an astonishing speed. Their target was naturally the land of divine shade. They wanted to kill the forest ocean sacred tribe that had betrayed their faith. The faith of this world would naturally belong to Yen Zhao's side, and the dragon god would be able to use his evil side to control the forest ocean god. He would remove the foundation of Guan Yin's resistance from the source of faith. But at the same time, at the entrance of the forest of hanging skulls, where Guan Yin had been talking to Jiang Wang, a pair of footprints suddenly became clear in the darkness. Guan Yin's footprints. As soon as this pair of footprints appeared, they circled the entire forest of hanging skulls at an astonishing speed. Then, the footprints disappeared as if nothing had happened. But when the first skinny treant tried to cross this line, a pillar of light suddenly shot into the sky and pierced through it on the spot. One after another, then 4, then 5, no matter how many treants rushed out, no matter how agile or fierce they were. As long as they crossed the line, they would be pierced through. The treants did not rest, and the pillar of light did not stop. When pitch black had already become the unchanging base color of the forest ocean origin world at night, the pillars of light on this night were like a forest. The skinny Trent's head was still hanging in the sky. The densely packed pillars of light pierced through countless trance, forming a huge circle of light. If one were to look down from the sky at this moment, it would definitely be very eye-catching. Perhaps no one would have thought that the forest of hanging skulls, which was known as the forbidden area of the forest ocean origin world, would actually disappear in such a way. Unfortunately, Yan Xiao and Jiang Wang were not here and could not see it with their own eyes. From the battle between Yan Xiao and Jiang Wang, to the struggle between the Dragon God and Guan Yin for the forest ocean sacred tribe's faith, from history to tradition, and then to each individual person, from the side of Yuheng's star, to the origin sea of the forest ocean origin world, and then to the forest of hanging skulls. The battle between the Dragon God and Guan Yin had erupted in all aspects. This battle had lasted for more than 500 years, and it had entered its final chapter tonight. After the Dragon God was pinned down by the World God Tree, he attacked Guan Yin 7 times and used all his abilities, but Guan Yin resisted 7 times. This was a soul-stirring battle. The Dragon God had used a long time to set up a trap and gradually capture Yuheng. It could not be said that he had not put in a lot of effort, but of all things, he should not have given Guan Yin 500 years. The lifespan of the dragon race was too long, so perhaps he did not know what 500 years meant to the human race. A divine Advent cultivator who had broken through the lifespan limit only had a lifespan of 518 years. 500 years was the lifespan of a divine Advent cultivator. As for someone as talented as Guan Yin, who could stop him in his 500 years? 537 years of accumulation had been exchanged for a complete suppression of the Dragon God. Chapter 1365. Tathagata knows the thoughts of all living beings. He knows the truth. It was for him to read minds. This was a supreme divine ability of Buddhism. And Guan Yin used 537 years to study the Dragon God. How terrifying were the words, "know the truth"? All along, the Dragon God's greatest energy had been on how to capture and control Yuheng. He had never taken Guan Yin or even the forest ocean origin world, including the will of the world, seriously. Even if the divine hilt was snatched away, even if the speed of devouring the will of the world was slowed down, it was just a trick to deceive others. He did not want to be too ostentatious or cause too much of a commotion to attract other competitors. Including why he worked so hard to create the Dragon God seat mission, the Dragon God's messenger, and even thought of ways to give out some rewards from time to time, it was all to cover up the matter of occupying Yuheng's star. This was the only important point. He had set up so many backup plans over the long period of time that it was difficult for him to remember them all. How could he take Guan Yin, a little monk who was only at the inner mansion realm when he first entered the forest ocean origin world, seriously? All the stalemate were intentional. When the time came, he would show his true strength and naturally destroy everything. But what he did not expect was, it seemed that all his backup plans had been targeted. Even some of the methods that he did not have time to activate were destroyed in advance. Capturing Yuheng's star was too great a cause, and he had put in too much energy for it. Now, he wanted to wipe out Guan Yin. But from the side of Yuheng's star, to the origin sea of the forest ocean origin world, and then to the forest of hanging skulls, there was no place where he had the upper hand. What kind of opponent was this? It was only at this moment that the Dragon God truly faced this monk standing on the World God Tree. "Who are you?" He began to suspect that all of this was a trap set up long ago. Had his Alioth star been noticed long ago? "Who am I?" Guan Yin stood on the top of the World God Tree and displayed his power without any concealment. He suppressed the dragon god on almost every level of battle. If it weren't for you, your dragon god seat mission, and your perverse actions, now I would have probably established a golden body. He looked down at the dragon god from above and clenched his right hand into a fist. And now I am just a person who will not become a Buddha in this life. A fist smashed down. His fist was so small, but when it landed, it was so majestic. The fist crossed a long distance. So much so that there was a faint feeling that it was expanding at the same frequency as the distant Alioth star. Boom! The dragon's head was sent flying by the punch. However, the dragon's tail was still held in place by the World Divine Tree and could not fly too far. It was a great humiliation. This was a great humiliation. The dragon god was so angry that golden flames ignited in his eyes. The golden flames boiled into the shape of a throne. Meanwhile, at the altar of trees in the land of divine shade, light shone out from the wooden patterns on the altar. The light extended endlessly and shot towards the sky. As for the wood grains on the altar, after being magnified in the sky, they formed the shape of a throne. It floated in the air and radiated with light. In the distance, there was a golden flame after the bookstore was set ablaze. Densely packed Forest Ocean Saint clan members were gathered together to pray. The dragon god should be sitting in the night sky, but in the entire Forest Ocean Sacred clan, from the priests down, no one came to look at it. It didn't matter. At the same time as the altar of trees moved, in the depths of the universe, a huge divine throne appeared in the void. The divine throne appeared just below the expanding Alioth star, as if it was sitting on the Alioth star. The dragon god's throne had never been a simple ceremony. It connected the seven-star pavilion's secret realm, the Forest Ocean origin realm, and the modern realm. It was also the dragon god's countless attempts to approach the Alioth star in the past. Jiang Wang, Su Qiun, and the others had seen it before. The Alioth star had once sat on the divine throne. The roots of the World Divine Tree that were nailed to the dragon god's tail and had already spread to the middle of his body suddenly stopped invading. Then, inch by inch, they broke apart. The golden body shattered with the emerald patterns, and the dragon god roared at the sky. The entire World Divine Tree that was thousands of feet tall shook violently. At this time, he actually used the dragon god's throne to borrow the power of the Alioth star. He could actually reach this step. If no one obstructed him, controlling the Alioth star was only a matter of time. To the former Forest Ocean Sacred clan, the dragon god's throne was a miracle. To the so-called dragon god's emissary, the dragon god's throne was a process of announcing an oracle. But in the void of the universe, the dragon god's throne was actually a ceremony to shake the Alioth star. While borrowing the power of the Alioth star, it was also a step closer to controlling the Alioth star. At this time, Guan Yin sat down. When he sat down, there was nothing beneath him. When he sat down, endless starlight condensed, forming a resplendent throne that just happened to support him. This throne looked far less glorious than the dragon god's throne, and it was even less massive. But just by standing there was an invisible connection with the Alioth star. This was the Alioth divine throne. Guan Yin had never neglected his research and use of the Alioth star. He knew very well where the real battlefield was, so how could he ignore the Alioth star? This included borrowing the power of the Alioth star to descend to Starmoon Plain and communicate with Jiang Wang many times, including directly relying on the power of the Alioth star to fight against the mysterious powerhouse of the Pingding state. These were all manifestations of his contact with the Alioth star. Just like how he caught up with the divine Tao. In the exploration of the Alioth star, he did not lose to the dragon god. Dressed in a white monk robe, Guan Yin sat on the resplendent Alioth divine throne, adding a lot of majesty. With this seat, the shaking of the world god tree stopped once again. The Dragon God and Guan Yin both borrowed the power of the Alioth star at the same time, but in different ways. The Dragon God was holding up the Alioth star and inviting it to take a seat. On Guan Yin's side, he guided the Alioth star and let it invite him to take a seat. These two routes were decided based on the strength of both sides at the beginning. Guan Yin's weakness at the time was destined to be unable to hold up the Alioth star. He could only carefully guide it from small to large. What he had gained so far was actually on par. If a comparison had to be made, the Dragon God was hiding a mistress in a golden house and asking for the Alioth star's return. Guan Yin was eating the Alioth star's soft rice. This kind of comparison made the Dragon God so annoyed that he almost vomited blood. He put in more strength but did not get more in return. Especially Guan Yin's Alioth divine throne, which was obviously inspired by his Dragon God throne. How could he tolerate a thief stepping on his master's head? Of course, more importantly, even the power of the Alioth star could not overturn this monk. Looking at Guan Yin on the Alioth divine throne, the Dragon God's voice was like a drum. I didn't want to do this, but what can I do? Those golden dragon eyes closed for the first time. The void seemed to be trembling. No, it was the world god tree that was trembling, the forest ocean origin world's divine hilt. In the forest ocean origin world's world god sea, the true dragon's essence soul that was fighting with Guan Yin's split spirit suddenly swung its tail and flew into the sky, leaving the world god sea. But of course, he did not give up on the battle. Because immediately after, a mighty golden wave soared into the sky, leaving the world god sea and leaving with the true dragon's essence soul. At this moment, the Dragon God had chosen to empty the world god sea. Compared to killing the forest ocean origin world's living beings to gradually control the forest ocean origin world, what he was doing now was directly destroying the foundation of the forest ocean origin world's existence. It could be said that it was the sin of destroying the world, an evil deed that both humans and gods hated. That was why he said he did not want to do this. But at this moment, for the sake of the final victory, he did not care. A terrifying power descended into the void, and the true dragon's essence soul returned to its position. The Dragon God opened his eyes, and his aura was no longer the same. Although the universe was vast, he was the only one. Although the stars were mighty, all their light was gathered by him. The majestic world god sees essence soul that he had taken away condensed into a golden armored deity that was tens of thousands of feet tall in the void. With just one hand, he grabbed the world god tree. He pulled it out inch by inch, starting from the dragon's tail that had been pierced through. No matter how much power Guan Yin concentrated, no matter how he suppressed it, he could not stop the world god tree from leaving. The Dragon God was strangely calm at this moment. He only looked up at the Alioth divine throne that was getting farther and farther away, as well as Guan Yin, who was sitting on the divine throne with his palms together. That gaze seemed to ask, "What would you do?" Extracting the world god see's essence soul naturally required an unimaginable amount of power. But Guan Yin could also do it now. Because the forest ocean origin world's world will had already handed everything over to him. Using the world god see's essence soul to fight against the world god see's essence soul was the clearest solution, but how could he do that? If the world god sees essence soul completely, the entire forest ocean origin world would immediately collapse. Not only could he not do that, but he also had to immediately mobilize the world god sees essence soul that he controlled to repair the forest ocean origin world. As a result, in this battlefield in the depths of the void, he was alone and without help. The Dragon God waited quietly for a while. He did not see the forest ocean origin world collapse, nor did he see Guan Yin's spirit clone arrive with the other half of the world god sees essence soul. He did not even see Guan Yin's spirit clone, who was still in the forest ocean origin world, to repair the situation. What he waited for was the golden armored deity finally pulling out the world god tree to the end. Guan Yin was still sitting on top of the tree. Golden dragon blood dripped into the void. The roots of the world god tree had long been entangled with his flesh and blood. When it was forcefully separated, it was excruciating pain. But there was no pain in the dragon god's eyes. He looked at Guan Yin and sighed inexplicably. To think that a powerhouse like you would make such a choice. I feel very regretful. At this moment, he had already acknowledged Guan Yin's strength. To be able to display such a performance in a battle against him, this person was undoubtedly a powerhouse. He had already made preparations to battle Guan Yin, who was carrying the other half of the Forest Ocean Origin World's essence soul. It would definitely be a glorious clash. In his calculations, the Forest Ocean Origin World's collapse had two benefits. The first was to stop Yen Zhao's continuous resurrection from absorbing his divine power, and the second was to end Guan Yan's power of faith. He and Guan Yin shared the sin of destroying the world, and the outcome of the Forest Ocean Origin World's collapse was obviously very bad for Guan Yin. Then, for him, this matter was mostly beneficial. What he did not expect was that Guan Yin did not make such a choice. In such an intense battle, in the struggle for the stars in the universe, Guan Yan's spirit clone had chosen to stay in the Forest Ocean Origin World and not take away any of the world god C's essence soul. Was this worth it? Was it worth it for such a monotonous world, for those weak ants in that world? Thou shalt die today, but I will remember thy name, the dragon god said. The golden-armored deity, who was tens of thousands of feet tall, pulled with all his might. The entire world god tree was uprooted and detached from the dragon's body. The wound left behind by the world god tree was bloody and hideous, but he had already obtained freedom. Freedom of body, freedom of heart, freedom of mind, freedom of will. A true dragon should naturally soar in the universe. The dragon god roared angrily, and with a shake of his body, he was tens of thousands of feet tall. His breathing was like heavenly thunder, and his dragon body stretched out without end. The tip of one claw rested on the huge dragon god throne. The other claw landed on the infinitely expanding Alioth star. Just like that, he rested one claw on the side, with a majesty that seemed to control everything. Divine light was tens of thousands of feet long, bright and dazzling. He seemed to be the ruler of this void, the only true god in this place at this moment. And in front of him, who seemed even more insignificant than an ant, it was Guan Yin. The handsome monk in the white monk robe sat on the Alioth divine throne. A teardrop fell from the corner of his eye and fell into the endless void. Rumble. After all, this was an opponent who had fought for more than 500 years. After all, he had been forced to such a state. The dragon god could not help but ask, "Why are you crying?" Guan Yin said softly, "I have some regrets. When a man is about to die, it is inevitable that he will have regrets." The dragon god said, "Your mistake is that you do not know the heavens and do not respect the true dragon. What about you?" The dragon god was curious. "Me?" Guan Yin did not look at the Forest Ocean Origin. God knew how much he wanted to take another look. However, he only raised his head and looked at the majestic dragon god. "A true dragon like you, an existence born with great power. Do you have any regrets before you die?" The dragon god's golden vertical pupils focused. He saw that Guan Yin, who was sitting on the Alioth divine throne, still had his right hand on the armrest, but his left hand covered his face. The Buddha covered his face and could not bear to see the common people. At the same time, his body began to emit a jade light. Jade that burned jade and stone alike. After more than 500 years of bitter cultivation, Fang Tuo cultivated the Tao of true spirit and formed this true spirit body. However, at this moment it was burning. Burning with jade flames, he did not dare to ask about the next life. Some regrets. He did not ask any more. He removed the hand covering his face and suddenly stood up from the Alioth divine throne. With this stand, he became a 10,000-foot-tall jade Buddha. His body was like white jade, and his quality was like white jade. His spirit was like white jade, and his virtue was like white jade. The giant jade-colored Buddha stood firmly in the void and held the dragon god's 2 dragon horns with both hands, firmly holding them in place. Ah! Guan Yin, who had always been gentle and calm, roared angrily at this moment. He held the dragon god's tens of thousands of feet tall divine body and actually pushed it back. He kept pushing it deeper into the void. His footsteps rumbled as he stepped into the void, producing a thunderous boom. He pushed it forward, and the dragon god kept retreating. As powerful as the dragon god, he surged his divine power and angrily resisted. One claw grabbed the dragon god's throne, and the other claw grabbed the Alioth star. It carried out the most primitive and intense collision with the Jade Buddha. The terrifying power collided. There was no appearance, but it almost annihilated everything around it. Divine abilities, will, primordial spirit, Tao laws collided in an inch. However, the distance between the dragon claw and the Alioth star was still getting farther and farther. The dragon god's throne was also moved by him. The void that the Alioth star was temporarily locked in had already been locked by the dragon god with the dragon clan's secret formation. Otherwise, with such a big commotion, even in the depths of the void, there was no guarantee that no powerhouses would see and interfere. And Guan Yan's current actions were clearly to knock him out of this void and break the formation that trapped the Alioth star. He wanted to push him into the universe that was truly unconcealed and fight him to the death. No, it was to exchange death with him. Guan Yin burned his spirit body and turned it into a jade Buddha. He was already prepared to die. How could the dragon god let him do as he wished? The dragon horns were still resisting the jade Buddha's hand. As the dragon's body retreated, the golden-armored divine being that was formed from half of the quintessence energy of the forest ocean origin world suddenly leaped into the air and transformed into a brilliant golden crescent blade that slashed down towards Guan Yan's head. But at this moment, the world god tree that he had casually thrown away suddenly flew back and transformed into a green python that firmly bound the golden-armored deity. It was the forest ocean origin world's will. This indescribable existence controlled the world god tree to attack at this critical moment after the forest ocean origin world temporarily stabilized. He used the world god tree as a giant python to bind the world's origin power that the dragon god had plundered. The dragon god let out a long roar as he retreated. The golden-armored deity formed by the world's origin power exploded and blasted the green python that the world god tree had transformed into until it was covered in wounds. Almost half of the world's origin power was lost in this one attack. But endless golden waves surged and fell on the dragon's body. The remaining world's origin power was completely absorbed by the dragon god. For a moment, the golden scales shone brightly as he recovered and became even more powerful than before. In turn, he pushed the jade Buddha back 3 steps. "How can borrowed power be held for long?" the dragon god roared. "The gift of fate must be repaid." Guan Yin stomped heavily into the void, almost creating ripples in the void before he managed to stop himself. He used all his strength and said, "You and I must pay." But he retreated again. He retreated again and again. He couldn't resist the dragon god at all. And how long could this jade Buddha body last? 30 breaths? 50 breaths? Guan Yin didn't have an answer in his heart. He only knew that he had to hold on and hold on. He couldn't retreat anymore. Ah! He stopped in his tracks amidst the roar and once again blocked the dragon god. The jade-colored giant Buddha and the golden divine dragon were so opposite to each other in the void that they became a silent painting. The dragon god's golden vertical pupils stared at him, looking at this monk with such a handsome face. For some reason, he wanted to sigh. In his long life, he had never seen such a monk, such a person. Even if he was on the opposite side of him, he still felt amazed. If everyone in the human race was like this, then the dragon race's defeat in the sea back then was not unjustified. But this was his era. It ends here, he said. It was so calm that it was like the conclusion after the dust had settled. Was it the end? Cracks gradually appeared on the jade Buddha's body. Guan Yin looked at him angrily, but he gradually lost his spirit. In his life, he rarely had such an angry and distorted expression. No matter what the situation was, he could face it and solve it. But was it the end? The 537-year struggle was just an illusion. In the end, it only achieved the dragon god's awakening from a dream? The long years of suffering couldn't wait for the flower to bloom in the end? Was it the end? At this moment, a clear and bright voice suddenly sounded in the void. To be precise, it sounded on the infinitely expanding Yuhing star. When I was 5 years old, I had the ambition to cultivate. A speck of starlight rose from the lightless Yuhing star. That speck of starlight also shone into Guan Yan's eyes. At the age of 19, I have yet to reach the age of 20, but I have already conquered the world. Countless starlight pounced out of Yuhing like fireflies. Guan Yin could tell whose voice it was. He could feel whose light it was. After traveling thousands of miles, I will draw my sword. The starlight gathered and formed an outline. I will go to the bewildering world to establish my words. The starlight vaguely gathered and took shape like a building. Those who believe are the words of others. A husband doesn't speak lightly. My path must begin with faith. This was the Starlight Sacred Tower. Who was it that built the Starlight Tower at this time and place? Today there was no other choice. This was Jiang Qingyang's Starlight Tower, that young man who put down everything in the present world and decisively came to the distant world because of his call for help. In this endless void, outside this Yuhing star, a towering building rose. Although it was only an outline, it already had endless radiance. That radiance was resplendent, resolute and down to earth. It was tempered step by step. That young man who was at a loss, who carried a heavy burden and walked with difficulty, was now in this endless universe, passing on his Tao. In the void there was a heavenly step, following some mysterious connection, crossing time and space to come. Under the dazzling golden heavenly step, there was a young man in a green robe, holding a sword, striding forward. Since ancient times, those who built the Starlight Tower were all far away in the present world. They first anchored a star in the distant sky, continuously transmitting power, accumulating starlight, and then gradually built the Starlight Tower. Of course, there was no lack of people who reached perfection and directly sensed from afar, instantly building the Starlight Tower. But no one had heard of anyone who actually came close when building the Starlight Tower. It was like personally building the Starlight Tower in the sky. There was no need for any anchoring. How could one be lost in front of the Starlight Tower? What made the dragon god's eyes especially twitch was that the divine power used to construct the Starlight Tower came from himself. Or more accurately, it came from the divine power that Yan Xiao had borrowed. That useless bastard had actually defected to the enemy. At this moment, Yan Xiao was flying in front of the dragon god, his movements extremely vigorous. Guan Yin was pleasantly surprised, and the dragon god was shocked and furious. But to Jiang Wang, when the dragon god had drained half of the world's origin sea, the entire forest ocean origin world was instantly riddled with holes. The connection between the Yuhing star and the forest ocean origin world had never been so clear before. He had seen some information in the dragon god's temple of origin and understood some of the truth. But more importantly, he had coincidentally seen the moment the crack in the world broke open in that place. Guan Yan's actions of quickly repairing the world had prevented the forest ocean origin world from going extinct. Jiang Wang had also managed to preserve his life and safely see the universe from within the forest ocean origin world. It wasn't like looking up at the stars in the modern realm. Rather, it was like looking up at the truth of the universe through a crack in the world. With Yan Xiao by his side, Yan Xiao could sense the dragon god in the distant void and clearly know where the Yuheng star was currently trapped. Jiang Wang had won first place in the Seven-Star Pavilion's secret realm. After passing through the Dubhe world, he had received the secret realm's reward, and it just so happened that he had used the Big Dipper as a beacon to establish the Four Saints Tower. It was the supreme technique, Seven-Star Sacred Tower. The Big Dipper was called Dubhe, Yuheng, Kaiyang, and Yaoguang. All of this happened naturally. Thus, he had erected the Forest Ocean Origin World. Although this Starlight Tower was only in its embryonic form, something had already changed the moment it appeared. The Seven-Star Sacred Tower was a supreme technique that connected the seven stars. Generally speaking, even if one used the Big Dipper as a beacon to establish a Starlight Tower, the Starlight Tower could only be established within the influence of a certain star in the universe. However, the Yuheng star had been captured by the Dragon God and was currently trapped in the void. Jiang Wang just so happened to arrive at the Divine Realm. This Starlight Tower was directly above the Yuheng star. Its nature was comparable to the Yuheng star in the Forest Ocean Origin World. Once it was established, it would be connected to the Yuheng star. If the Yuheng star had been struggling to choose between the Dragon God and Guan Yan before, it was now on Guan Yan's side without hesitation. Whether it was Jiang Wang or the Starlight Tower he had established, they were insignificant in the battle between the Dragon God and Guan Yan. However, in the battle between the two sides for the Yuheng star, they had dropped a very important piece of leverage. The Dragon God's throne that attempted to lift the Yuheng star was almost immediately repelled by the Yuheng star. Meanwhile, the Yuheng divine throne that Guan Yan had already left began to shine brightly. Jade-colored Buddhist light flowed around the Yuheng divine throne, and even the entire Yuheng star was soaked in jade light. With the support of the Yuheng star, the cracks on Guan Yan's jade Buddha body began to heal. Boundless power poured into his body, and he even directly pushed the Dragon God's tens of thousands of feet tall body to the ground. Rumble! The Dragon God's head heavily smashed into the void, creating a crack in the void. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.